A goddess opens a portal for Renya, apologizes for involving him, and wishes him luck. Renya glances back before entering. Renya Kunugi died at 94 and was sent to another world without memories of his past. Seeing two suns above an otherwise familiar sky, he wonders why he appeared in a forest. Unsure whether the area is safe, Renya opens his inventory and finds armor and a shinai listed as his weapon. The manual explains that a sword did not match Renier's characteristics, while the shinai suited the kendo skills from his past life. Renya decides to find people but cannot choose which direction to take. He tries using a falling branch to pick a path, but a distant scream comes from the opposite direction. Renya heads toward it. Bandits surround Rona Chevalier and Shin Femme Fatale. Shin warns them to stay back, but they mock and threaten the girls. Renya approaches with his shinai and asks whether the grown men are ashamed of harassing two women. Everyone stares at him in confusion until the leader demands his identity and asks whether he wants trouble. Shin warns Renya that they are warriors from the mercenary kingdom and tells him to run. Renya refuses to abandon the girls. The bandits mock his weapon and offer to share the girls with him. Angered, Renya approaches the leader and points his shinai at him. When the bandit mocks the weapon again, Renya promises to beat him with that same stick. The leader grabs the shinai, but Renya attacks before he can react. Renya strikes him in the throat and knocks him down, shocking the bandits and the girls. Another bandit attacks with brass knuckles, but Renya strikes him in the forehead. The blow sends the man flying. Renya declares that the shinai is a sword, not a stick. The remaining bandits surround him, but Renya warns them not to enter his range and attacks first. Renya quickly defeats two more bandits while the girls watch in amazement. Renya defeats the entire group and explains that a shinai can still cause serious injuries, especially with thrusting techniques. Rona thanks Renya. He says he may have interfered unnecessarily, but she denies it. Shin also thanks him and explains that the mercenary kingdom's warriors specialize in hand-to-hand combat. When Renya admits he has never heard of them, he calls himself an alien. The girls accept this because they know people from other worlds exist. The girls introduce themselves as Rona Chevalier, a novice nun, and Shin Femme Fatale, a novice swordswoman. Renya introduces himself and suggests leaving before the mercenaries awaken. Renya asks whether they can abandon the men. Rona replies that anyone unconscious in this forest for over 10 minutes will die, but she does not care. Shin explains that their world is called Iredora and has 5 continents. They are on the western side of the human-controlled eastern continent, near a miasma forest and demon territory filled with monsters. Renya realizes he may have killed 2 people but feels strangely calm, making him wonder about his past. Rona is shocked that he arrived only moments ago. Shin explains that aliens usually panic after arriving, while Renya calmly defeated trained warriors. Rona adds that people close to her call her Ro. Renya becomes embarrassed when Rona leans toward him. She explains that they belong to the Adventurers Guild of the Principality of Trident and accepted a quest to investigate and capture a goblin settlement. Goblins have been attacking a nearby village. Renya learns they are weak alone but dangerous in groups and is surprised the girls came alone, but Shin says their original party had 8 members. The 6 mercenaries were their former companions. Rona advises Renya to travel to the principality by carriage in a few days while they continue investigating the goblins. The girls need information even if they cannot win, because returning empty-handed would hurt their careers and leave the villagers in danger. Renya offers to help despite receiving no payment, asking only for information about the world. Shin believes that reward is too small for the danger, but Renya insists the knowledge is valuable to him. Rona calls Renya a good person and convinces Shin to accept his help. This becomes the beginning of Renya's new life with the 2 girls. Renya and the girls reach their small home village. Rona says Shin struggles around men and needs time to calm down. She assumes Renya is their age, while he hides that he died at 94. Renya remembers the goddess joyfully congratulating him on earning reincarnation while angels sang around them. He angrily demanded that she stop. The goddess revealed that Renya died at 94 with amnesia and never had a girlfriend. She restored his former skills while giving him the body and attributes of an 18-year-old, causing Renya to hit her. Renya demanded an explanation. The goddess said they were in the realm of the gods, inhabited only by angels and herself. She announced that Renya would be reborn in another world but did not clearly explain why. The goddess said only a few souls can cross the wall between universes. Renya's unusual soul rebounded from it, allowing her to offer him another life. His body, mind, and soul were purified before being transferred. Renya was chosen as a new hero from among 5.63 million candidates. Renya asked what reward he would receive, but the goddess initially said nothing. After Renya became angry, she admitted there were other reincarnated people and additional reasons for sending him. The goddess explained that Eldor was running out of resources, including water, air, and human souls, and she wanted Renya to help. She showed him a world divided among elves, humans, half-beasts, dragons, and dragon tamers, whose territories were increasingly at war. Each territory was ruled by a godlike leader commanding armies and people. Renya demanded to see everything himself. The goddess had already transferred 5 other people to command each race's borders. Renya asked whether he could defeat them, and she warned that without intervention, 80% of the world would be destroyed. Although the goddess could interfere directly, she preferred Renya to act in her place. Souls called Lanus normally fuel reincarnation. Those killed in battle return to life, though deaths caused by dragons, orcs, or goblins can be especially unpleasant. Many souls enter the world but refuse reincarnation, causing its resources to decline. The goddess tried persuading the dead to help but succeeded with only 5 people. Restoring the world would require time. She asked Renya to save the world, while the 5 racial leaders delayed its collapse. Renya refused, but the goddess embraced him and called him her final hope. When Renya demanded the truth, she joked that 5.6 million people had rejected her, leaving only the useless Renya. Renya punished her for the insult and asked how becoming a god would stop the wars. The goddess claimed great power would let him frighten monsters and control people. Renya rejected ruling the world and demanded better rewards. She revealed that Renya had been a food taster and promised Eldora contained unique dishes, though he would need to gather ingredients across the world. Renya agreed to consider it but demanded superpowers, freedom from mind control, and guaranteed resurrection. The goddess accepted his conditions and asked which powers he wanted. Shin pulls Renya from his memories and warns that they may encounter goblins, so he needs a proper weapon. Renya still believes his shinai is sufficient. Shin says the shinai may break or leave him defenseless. Rona suggests Renya may possess powers that compensate for it. After finding nothing valuable among the mercenaries' belongings, Shin gives Rignir a spare sword in case he loses it. Renya examines Shin's repaired Japanese sword before storing it in his inventory, surprising both girls. Shin recognizes his rare vacuum storage ability. Renya explains that the weapon appears automatically when needed. Rona envies the ability because she carries the heaviest luggage. Renya offers to store their belongings before they search for the goblins. Renya suddenly senses something approaching from the forest, though Shin sees nothing. Shin asks Rona to investigate, and she begins casting a spell. Rona detects over 50 hostile creatures, with more beyond her range. Shin explains that the monk art research reveals the terrain and warns of danger. Shin realizes the goblins may be preparing to capture the village under a leader's command. She orders Rona to evacuate the women and children while the men prepare to fight. Shin asks whether Renya will still help, and he promises not to abandon them. Only 10 capable men gather against the much larger, well-armed goblin force, while no military assistance is available. Shin explains that if they lose, the villagers will be killed or eaten, and the young women will face an even worse fate. Renya says the battle will be fun and claims defeating the goblins should be easy. Shin is frightened by Renya's smile, while someone hidden in the forest laughs. The goblins attack after sunset as the hostile presence surrounding the village grows. Renya counts 12 armed villagers, the 2 girls and himself. To defeat the larger force and its leader, they will need to fight recklessly. Shin asks whether Renya is accustomed to battle. He cannot remember, but confidently says they will win before an arrow lands nearby. A volley follows as armed goblins emerge. Shin orders the village archers to fire. Every arrow misses, revealing the villagers' lack of combat experience. Renya tells Shin to watch and charges the goblins alone while their archers continue missing. Renya beheads the first goblin with an axe, shocking the others. He kills another and draws the sword from his belt, declaring it is now his turn to laugh. Several goblins attack Renya. Meanwhile, Rona warns Shin that more enemies are approaching from the opposite side. Renya fights with an axe and sword, quickly killing the goblins around him. He He stabs one through the heart, hacks it apart with the axe, and challenges the frightened survivors. Renya continues killing the goblins one by one, while inviting the rest to attack. Shin cuts down a goblin with her sword, while Rona crushes another with her mace. Two goblins attack Shin. She blocks one and kills both, copying Renya's technique against the second. A third attacks from behind, but Rona knocks it away and warns Shin to stay alert. Surrounded, Shin and Rona stand back to back and prepare to continue fighting. Renya's sword breaks, but he disarms an attacking goblin and kills it with the broken blade. A large goblin, apparently their leader, approaches. Shin tells Renya to retreat because his sword is broken and offers to face the leader herself. Renya refuses and approaches the leader with the broken sword. The goblin leader attacks with a massive slow sword. Renya dodges the heavy downward strike. The leader swings horizontally, but Renya ducks beneath the blade and prepares to counter. Another goblin attacks from behind the leader, but Renya steals its weapon and kills it. Renya stabs the leader in the side, withdraws the knife, and trips him. After the leader falls, Renya pins his sword arm and leaves him unable to defend himself. Renya stabs the goblin leader through the throat, takes his greatsword, and advances on the remaining enemies. Surrounded by blood and dying goblins, Renya wants the remaining enemies to experience the same terror. With a twisted smile, Renya continues killing and begins craving more. At dawn, the exhausted Renya and Shin confirm that they are still alive. Shin sees Renya standing among countless goblin corpses and realizes he saved them. As Renya continues killing, the goddess watches through a screen and complains that he is doing everything wrong. She questions whether erasing his memories was wise, since his abilities make defeating 100 goblins easy. Renya had requested excellent health, a strong stomach and kidneys, a large appetite, and the ability to drink alcohol. He also wanted free food and useful equipment. Since his body retained swordsmanship skills, the goddess offered him either appraisal or blacksmithing. Renya requested magic and chose agility over strength, planning to train his young body himself. The goddess granted his chosen abilities, the language of another world, and a divine blessing. The changes also made Renya more cruel, while the goddess left him to discover how his magic worked. Only 2 men survived the goblin attack. The injured Rona and Shin agree that everyone owes their survival to Renya. Renya gathers the goblin corpses while the girls praise him for saving the village. Rona explains that the bodies must be burned to prevent resurrection, and Shin creates a magical flame. Rona says she is an apprentice who may eventually become a priestess. She can grant divine power but cannot use other magic. Renya assumed Shin specialized only in combat, but Rona explains that basic magic is available to anyone. Shin admits she is not skilled with it. Renya realizes he never asked the goddess how to use magic. Shin offers to introduce him to her teacher in Kukurika. Renya collects the goblins' magic cores. Rona says they must submit them to the guild as proof of completing the quest. Shin notices a cart from Kukuriki approaching in the distance. Several days later, they reach the trading town of Kukurika. Kukurika has around 10,000 residents and 2,000 soldiers guarding the forest border. Its trade is prosperous, though Renya considers the walls weak. Guards stop Renya because he lacks identification. Shin identifies him as a lost man and Rona vouches for him, allowing him to enter. Rona tells Renya to register with the guild because its card can serve as identification. The girls submit their quest while Renya prepares to register. The receptionist notes that the mission originally required 8 people. Rainier waits in another room while Shin helps with his registration. Renya writes his name on the form using characters that appear Japanese to him, thanks to his language ability. The guild rules forbid unjustified killing of members, require contributions to the guild, allow questions to be directed to the secretary, and permit group leaders to create additional rules. There aren't that many rules. The girl explains that there are many more minor rules, but creating a detailed guide for adventurers who specialize in combat is pointless and troublesome. Renya's application is accepted. Now he has to wait for his card to be made. Shin and Rona enter the room. They've already finished. It took a while to explain some of the circumstances, but they should be given a nice reward. They were given 12 gold coins. Renya thinks it's too much, but Rona explains that it's because the quest was originally supposed to have 8 participants and the number of goblins was enormous. The 3 of them sit down at the table to have tea. Shin and Ro talk and decide to give Renya half of the reward. Renya refuses, saying it's too much and he's done nothing, but Shin says they only completed the quest thanks to him. He single-handedly defeated almost the entire goblin horde. Rona says they'd like to give him more and have one more request of him. Shin wants Renya to join their group. Renya is surprised, and Rona watches him while sipping her tea. Shin is rather short-sighted and usually relies on Ro, but she would be happy if Renya would help her. Rona supports her, as it's not very convenient when there are only 2 girls in the group. Renya doesn't understand how they can trust him so easily. The girls say that if he were untrustworthy, he would have run away during the battle with the goblins. Shin promises to tell him everything he knows about this place, and also that adventurers work more effectively together than alone. Renya thinks it would be a good idea to make some allies. As they leave the guild, he asks Rona to give him a night to think about it. That night in his hotel room, Renya wipes himself with a damp towel. Being Japanese, he won't feel clean unless he takes a bath, and he winces in disgust. He also can't get Rona and Shin's proposal out of his head, unsure what to do. He's been with them for a few days and they're good people, but it seems they're hiding something. There's a knock on the door and Renya reaches for the gun under her pillow. Outside, Rona apologizes for being so late and asks to talk to him. Renya tells her to come in, the door is unlocked. Rona enters the room wearing a thin nightgown. Renya blushes. Rona is breathing heavily, her face is also red. She leans her hand on the bed and looms over Renya. The strap of her nightgown slips off Rona's shoulder. She smiles and tucks her hair behind her ear, asking if he doesn't know what he wants. Renya blushes and can't take her eyes off her exposed breasts. Rona continues to loom over him, cornering Renya. He swallows, tense and embarrassed, and Rona leans down to his face. He says he has no idea what she wants. Rona whispers in his ear that he pushed her this far and now he wants her to say it all out loud. She tells him not to worry and leave it all to her, stroking his thigh, promising to please him. Renya doesn't understand why Rona has suddenly fallen for him. She giggles and says that a woman's heart is a complicated thing. Renya places her hand on her waist, agreeing to her proposal. Rona giggles, leaning in close to his lips, and says she loves obedient boys. However, Renya suddenly hits her in the ribs with her thumb, causing Rona to scream and lose consciousness. She comes to on Renya's bed. Renya is sitting in a chair next to her, watching her. Rona sighs, frustrated that nothing worked out, even though she thought everything was going according to plan. Renya says she might have succeeded if he had been younger, but it was reckless to approach a 94-year-old with such a thing. Rona asks who's 94 here and laughs when Renya points to herself. She takes it as a joke. Renya asks what she was trying to achieve, and Rona becomes serious. She sits down and says she just wanted him to agree to Shin's proposal. Renya asks what will happen if he refuses. Rona repeats that she wants him to join them. Renya doesn't understand why. There must be others who can be invited. Rona says she's absolutely crazy about him, but Renya is only irritated. He wants her to be serious. Rona says the first reason is his fighting skills, the second is that he would never abandon a damsel in distress, and the third is that he's never flirted with them. Renya doesn't understand. He asks why she tried to seduce him then. Rona says she hoped to press his sense of responsibility if they went too far. Renya wants to ask her a few questions about her and Shin. Depending on the answers, he might even forgive her for her treachery. Rona agrees. Firstly, the situation in which Renya and the girls met seems suspicious to him. A group of 6 dubious types and 2 girls sounds odd, and Rona's revealing clothing seems designed to provoke an attack. All the nuns here dress like that. Rona hugs herself and says he's embarrassing her. Secondly, they both have last names, and Shin even has a middle name, and where Renya comes from, such people often come from noble families. He takes out the broken piece of the sword Shin gave him. The pattern on its hilt is of very high quality, but Shin said it was an ordinary sword. It would be too wasteful for a commoner to use as a backup weapon. The fact that she continues to use it, keeping the handle, suggests it's an important detail, perhaps a family crest of sorts. Rona asks sarcastically if he was planning on keeping it for himself and then selling it since he has such a keen eye. Renya has another question. This one caught his attention the most. The guard at the entrance to Kukurika was far too polite to them. A simple amateur traveler like Rona would never have been allowed to vouch for such a suspicious character as Renya. Travelers are hardly held in such high esteem here. So there must be some reason for his politeness. Rona lies seductively on the bed, saying that the guard simply fell under her spell and she tasted sin by following the righteous path. There are still a few things troubling Renya, but he decides to leave them out for now. Rona asks what he plans to do after he said all this. Considering these 3 points, Renya thinks that they are of noble birth and there is some reason why they do not talk about it, something related to their social status. Rona says his curiosity is unseemly and he should be in the military police. Rainier doesn't care about her taunts. As long as he harbors these suspicions, he won't even consider inviting them. They stare at each other in silence. Finally, Rona sighs, lamenting that everything has gone wrong, even though she thought she was playing well. She agrees to tell him since he'll find out sooner or later anyway, and she failed to seduce him, which makes him even more trustworthy. Shin is indeed of noble birth, but she can't say anything more right now. Rona, of course, isn't a nun, but then what was the point of the stupid power she used? Rona confirms she lied about being a monk's apprentice. She's actually a knight and must protect Shin. She's experienced enough, she could easily deal with those 6 mercenaries. Shin couldn't have handled it alone, and Rona played her part to make her believe she was in danger. Apparently, the wealthy girl decided to travel to the outside world and her family sent Rona to retrieve her. Rona doesn't confirm this, only saying she thought Shin was too carefree. Shin sneezes in her room. Rona promises he'll understand if he joins them. Renya thinks he simply wanted a peaceful life. He asks if Rona used Shin to get to him, but Rona denies Shin's involvement. She sincerely believes she needs Renya's help. That's why Rona did it. Rona continues to insist that he join them. Renya thinks she's right, as traveling alone would be truly difficult. Rona winks and suggests he, too, will have a chance to fall in love with her, but Renya tells her to get lost. Rona is offended and threatens to embarrass him throughout the hotel by shouting his name while she's in such an inappropriate state. Finally, Renya gives in and decides he's ready to join them. Rona thanks him. She makes another dirty joke and Renya tells her to get lost. That morning, over breakfast, Renya declares he needs a larger and more regular salary. Shin is taken aback and Renya angrily explains that he doesn't like the shack they're staying in. It doesn't have anything to meet his basic needs. The food is terrible, the bed is uncomfortable, and there's not even a bathtub. He continues to swear, and Shin remarks that he's apparently in a foul mood. Rona says he just doesn't like the place, but to rent a decent house, you'll need at least 1 platinum coin. Renya admits he was naive in thinking he could handle everything alone, but he knows little about this world, has no connections, and finding other allies will be difficult. So, it will be easier to work with those he already knows. Shin, surprised, asks if this means. Renya confirms he's ready to join their group. Shin, embarrassed and overjoyed, stutters her thanks and even grabs his hand. Renya tries to explain that this is only until he finds a place to live, but the inspired Shin doesn't listen. Lost in thought, she starts talking about the kids back home, but Rona abruptly cuts her off. Renya asks who she's talking about, whether they have other companions. Shin awkwardly declines, and Renya is already beginning to regret agreeing. Shin suggests continuing their old conversation about magic once they're done here. And so, with a hint of mistrust, Renya set off to find his place in a second life he didn't want. Shin and Renya are in the sorceress's apartment. Renya is holding a crystal ball. The sorceress tells him to imagine a bright light so they can determine the type of his magic. The 3 of them watch as a green light appears in the center of the ball, indicating that Renya's magic type is wind. Carol Villiers is Kukuriki's only sorceress, self-proclaimed. She says Renya's wind-type magic is quite powerful, but his mana is only half what it should be. The color of the aurora is fine, it's rare to see something so beautiful, but technically it's not powerful enough. She picks up the orb and it glows brightly. On an ordinary person it would glow dimly, but if someone has a talent for magic, the light will be blinding, like hers. There have been cases where the orbs exploded when heroes touched them. Shin mumbles awkwardly that her orb is barely glowing. Carol explains that mana will gradually increase as you use magic, but with such a starting mana level, you can't expect much. Renya asks how he should train. Carol extends her hand and demands 7 silver coins, and Shin pays her. Carol takes Renya's hand and grants him light, their palms glowing. A piece of paper with some symbol remains in Renya's palm. A notification arrives that he has received the non-elemental skill, light. Renya accepts it. Carol speaks the words required, and then a small clot of light appears. To effectively level up his magic, Renya simply needs to continue casting this skill. He asks about his predisposition to wind magic, but Carol insists he's not ready. She can teach Renya how to use it, but he won't be able to use it. If he manages to increase his mana through training, she promises to grant him some wind magic next time, but not for free. After meeting the sorceress, Shin hums contentedly, and Renya notices that she looks suspiciously happy. Shin explains with a smile that she simply realized that even he's bad at something. She's bad at magic too, so they're similar. Renya tells her not to compare and punches her in the forehead. He asks if Shin can wait a few days before accepting him into the group. Renya knows little about magic or even about her abilities. Shin is surprised. Renya explains that when he arrived in Eldora, he lost most of his memories. Shin is surprised as he didn't seem confused when they met. Apparently, Renya is one of those missing in action. Renya agrees. He decides not to mention the goddess's words echoing in his head. Fortunately, Shin isn't very smart and simply finds him mysterious. Renya wants to test his abilities and needs a place to train. Shin suggests he go north of the city, where she often trains. The monsters there are weak and the land is barren, so there's no need to worry about destroying everything. Renya warms up, preparing to test her endurance. He runs and jumps, amazed at how light his body is. Is this what it feels like to be young? Renya reaches the wasteland. Shin said it would take a couple of hours, but Renya got here so quickly. He's not even out of breath, apparently confident in his abilities now. Renya trains with a sword. The sword is actually pretty mediocre, but there's no other way. With a sword like that, you have to be vigilant. Once Renya gets the hang of it, he'll make his own. They gave him the smithing skill for a reason. Next, they can try magic. Renya recalls Carol's instructions. He holds out his hand. He needs to cast a spell to use it. Renya casts a spell. It becomes dark around her. Renya doesn't understand. The spell was light. Did he pronounce it wrong? Someone calls him. Renya's eyes snap open. He sees white women's underwear in front of him. An unknown girl bends over him, asking if he's okay. The girl asks him again if everything is okay. Renya lies there, still dazed. Realizing the position they're in, he jerks away, knocking the girl off her feet. She falls to the ground, her skirt riding up, but she quickly gets back on her feet. Renya asks who she is, and she introduces herself as a traveling merchant. She was passing by when she saw him fall, but he seems okay. Renya is surprised by her fall. The girl says he wasn't down for long. Could it be magic? Renya doesn't have enough mana, but to faint? It doesn't matter. Who this girl is now is more important. He takes a stance and holds out his sword, and the girl says she won't hurt him. She's just a merchant. Renya doubts it. Shouldn't a merchant have some sort of belongings? The girl smirks. Renya must have heard a lot about her. She's a great merchant, possessing a rare void vault, Kiiri. Renya has never heard of her. She says their meeting is fate and he should take a look at her wares. She sells a wide variety of things. She ignores Renya's objections. Renya begins to feel the urge to abandon her somewhere. She shows him a knife from her collection, opening her shop before Renya notices. It seems she really is a merchant and hardly dangerous. Suddenly, Renya notices something among her wares. He picks up a long Japanese sword, most likely an uchigatana, but the goddess said there couldn't be any Japanese swords here. Kiiri is surprised he knows about a Japanese sword. It seems to have been left behind by a lost person long ago, and because so few people know about it, it seems like a simple trinket. She would very much like to sell it for a good price. Renya puts the uchigatana back. Kiiri offers to lower the price. Renya says there's no one in this world who would suit this sword like him, but he has no money. Kiiri realizes he's lost and offers to trade for something he brought with him to Eldora. Renya takes out his shinai. Kiiri's eyes light up. It looks like an artifact. She picks it up and examines it, offering to trade it for a Japanese sword. Renya doubts it's an equal trade, but Kiiri says that since it's an artifact, it'll be much easier to sell than a Japanese sword. Kiiri asks him to show her how to use the sword. After that, the likelihood of selling it will increase, but she'll still trade with him. Renya agrees. Kiiri enthusiastically points him to a wooden pole as a target. She's eager to see a sword demonstration. Renya takes a stance and places her hand on the hilt of her sword, inhaling. He draws his uchigatana from its sheath and makes several quick succession of strikes at the pole as Kiiri watches in shock. The pillar breaks into several pieces. Kiiri didn't even see the sword move. Renya says it's a good sword and it seems familiar to him to hold it. Kiiri confirms the exchange is complete. They're both satisfied. Kiiri turns to leave, muttering something about a prophecy. She says Renya fell due to a lack of magical power and he should practice in safer places, though it's just an archang, a merchant's intuition. She winks at Renya and tells him he'll definitely become strong in magic and leaves, saying goodbye. Renya thinks she's strange. She's spent so much effort on this. Should he consider himself lucky? Hidden behind a mountain, the girl reports her progress to the bracelet on her wrist. She has taken Kanugi Renya's shinai. On the other end of the line, the goddess praises her, calling her Galero, and the girl angrily reveals her name is Jiriel. She blames the goddess for forcing her to change her name and engage in such idiotic work. The goddess needs to stop thoughtlessly bestowing attributes like indestructibility on the shinai. It's stronger than diamond, unbreakable, and could easily pierce castle walls, dragon scales, and even the seals that separate worlds. She continues to scold the goddess for her negligence, and she begins to shout back that she cannot keep track of everything. She already has a lot of work. The goddess asks if she gave him a replacement. Jiriel confirms she took the Uchigatana from Renya's grave. The goddess is confident the sword is easy to use. She praises Jiriel for her work, confusing her name again, but it is truly excellent work. Shin opens the door, happily announcing a request. Renya stands there, wearing an apron and holding a teapot, looking awkward. He asks for Rona. The three of them gather around the table, and Shin explains the details. It happens south of here, and the crew apparently discovered a new living dungeon. The request is to conquer it. A living dungeon is a type of dungeon where abandoned mines are filled with monsters, capable of reshaping everything around the dungeon core. The core is full of monsters and treasures, and adventurers who come for them often die from mana depletion. The dungeon core uses this mana to grow and sustain monsters. Even if you leave the dungeon, it will continue to absorb the surrounding mana. Since there are many monsters there, they were asked to deal with them. Renya asks if it's just them, and Shin says there will be 4 more participants. The guild has prepared transport for them, but they only have 2 days for the journey and 2 days to explore the dungeon. Each side will receive 6 gold coins, and destroying the core will net them an additional 10. Renya and Rona exchange glances. The request seems reasonable. Shin says they'll leave in the morning and meet up with the other participants this evening. Renya spits out her tea. Renya and Rona are outraged by the rush and ask Shin to consult with them first before accepting orders. They have a lot to prepare before the trip. They may have their own circumstances, and even if Shin is their leader, she must respect their opinions. The girls are surprised. They thought Renya was their leader. Renya says he's a lost man. How can he be a leader? Rona says it would help her a lot and asks to become their leader. Renya tries to object, but Rona gives him a very eloquent look. Renya seems to understand her without words. He clutches his head. As leader, Renya will have to sort everything out, gathering food and equipment, which will take time. Shin is upset and apologizes for her haste. Usually, Rona does everything for her. Renya says she should be grateful. They don't have much time, so they need to hurry. Rona will go to the store and get everything ready, while Renya and Shin will go to the meeting. Renya asks if she has information about the other groups, and she assures him she knows everything. Shin takes him to the Silver Cup, an inn run by the Adventurers Guild. They walk inside. There are a lot of people sitting at the tables. 3 guys look at them unfriendly. It seems everyone is already here. Renya and Shin sit down at the table. The armored man says that everyone who plans to take over the dungeon has gathered here. Renya asks Shin what he means. This man is the leader of the Blazing Lotus Bearer group, Heart's Raisin, a B-rank adventurer who wields 2 swords. He's likely the highest rank here. Ranks range from S to F, with Renya's group as newcomers at the very bottom. At another table, a guy is hugging a girl. It's Zest Fatality, the leader of the Sharp Fang group and a rapier wielder. Due to his bad behavior, he's a C rank, but his strength is like a B rank, hence his ranking. He's brazenly groping the girl. There's also a group called Explorers, led by a robed, red-haired man named Az Honda, a D rank. Unusually, he's a mage. His 4 armored companions act as shields during battle while Az casts spells. Shin truly knows a lot about the other groups, like a fangirl about her idols. They are rudely interrupted by Zest, who shouts that there are only 2 of them and asks how they will survive. Renya explains that their fellow priest is absent, busy with preparations. Zest gets angry and says he's not talking to him. Hearts tells Zest to calm down, and he apologizes to Renya, explaining that it would be easier if they left this matter to them. Zest says they're the last ones here, so let them identify themselves. Renya introduces herself and explains that he's a new adventurer and their group doesn't have a name yet. That makes them F rank. The other adventurers glance at them sideways. Zest begins insulting and mocking them. Shin intervenes, saying there was no rank restriction in the request. Zest asks her angrily who she is and laughs when Shin introduces herself and mentions her F rank. Suddenly, he grabs a bottle from the table and throws it at Shin. She covers her head with her hands. Renya catches the bottle next to her face. He places the bottle on the table. Zest grins. It looks like Renya wants to put on a show. Shin thanks him for saving her. The girl at Zest's table takes out throwing knives. Zest says that trash will remain trash. The girl throws 4 blades at Renya. Shin and the other group leaders are shocked. Zest smirks. Renya, frozen, looks at the knives flying at him. He deftly catches all 4 knives, shocking both Zest and the attacking girl. Zest calls him a bastard. Renya stabs the knives into the table and frowns angrily. He'd heard it would be a routine meeting, but it seemed something had gone wrong. He wondered whose fault it was. The veins on Zest's forehead were standing out. The others watch silently. Renya sighs and rises from the table. Since they're considered guilty, they're leaving. Shin tries to stop him. Renya says they won't work with them and they shouldn't try to justify their failure at their expense. They'll work alone and the others should do the same. It's the best solution. Hearts and Az agree. They want to work separately too. Zest clicks his tongue in irritation. Renya says they should call it a day. He and Shin are heading out. Zest yells at him to watch his back in the dungeon. Renya smirks and wishes him the same, but Zest is furious. They go outside and something hits the door as it closes behind them, startling Shin. She tries to apologize to Renya as she was the one who took the request, but Renya says the failure at the meeting is his fault. Shin returns to the previous topic and Renya threatens to smash her head in if she continues. They both exhale. This is Renya's first job as an adventurer and he wants to know if he can rely on Shin. Shin is at a loss, blushing, and then smiles and rushes after him, assuring him of her reliability. The wagons carrying adventurers travel along the road to the dungeon. Shin is riding one of the horses. Rona glares at Renya, who's sitting next to her in the carriage, asking if he did it on purpose. Renya asks what she's talking about. Their relationships with the other groups are truly bad and Rona asks him not to do it again. Renya says things were bad before and he did what he thought was best. Rona asks him to explain. Renya says that this way they'll avoid conflicts and let the others take care of everything. Shin, holding the reins, tries to stay awake. Shin yawns as Renya explains her strategy to Rona using her fingers, complete the mission effortlessly and collect the reward. Rona looks at him in shock. Rona says it would be easier to farm, but Renya insists his strategy is sound. Rona ultimately agrees that this is the best outcome for them, given their lack of training, and then they can protect Shin. Shin enviously thinks they're having fun there. She calls out to them and reminds them that they must take turns leading and that all this time she's been the only one leading. Rona says this is her punishment for accepting the mission without consulting them. She hasn't been forgiven yet. Shin whines. After a while, they stop at the entrance to the dungeon. The girls begin setting up the tent. Renya asks if it's okay to camp so close, and Rona says that dungeons older than 10 years don't have monsters that come to the surface. They can be seen from here and it's safer than camping in the forest. There's even a staircase at the entrance to the dungeon, apparently an invitation for living creatures. They only have one tent because they have to stand guard. Shin teases, wondering if sleeping next to them will bother Renya. Renya recalls the night Rona tried to seduce him but denies it out loud. Together, they prepare dinner. Renya invites them to the table. The girls admire his culinary skills. The table is laden with fruit, fish salad, vegetable and rabbit stew, stale bread, and wine. Renya says he could have cooked something better if they had more time to prepare and promises to be prepared for the next mission. Shin, spoon in mouth, says he's being too hard on himself, and Renya scolds her for eating without warning. Rona says that it's still a lot compared to other groups who only eat stale bread, although that's normal for adventurers, and they were just lucky because of Renya's void storage. The other groups glance at them sideways. Rona and Shin enjoy their food carefree. After the meal, Renya remembers there's something else he wanted to say. He warns them to be careful around Zest's group. He may not show it, but after the incident at the tavern, he might be up to something. The girls agree with him. Night falls. Rona stands guard. Shin is already asleep in the tent and Renya is settling in too. He needs to rest. He'll have to get up early to make breakfast. Suddenly, he feels a pressure. It doesn't feel like an enemy, but something soft. It turns out to be Shin. In her sleep, she's moved closer to him, hugging him and pressing her chest against his. She's muttering in her sleep, calling for Rona. Renya notes that Shin also has a habit of sleeping in her underwear. He calls out to Shin to wake her up. He can't move inside the sleeping bag. Shin doesn't wake up, only clings to him tighter, moaning and sighing. Renya is afraid of what will happen if Rona sees this. Shin smiles in his sleep and mutters Rona's name again. Rona answers from outside, thinking it's Renya calling her, and Renya panics. Rona peers into the tent and watches them. Renya is about to make excuses, but Rona suddenly snuggles up to him from the other side. She says she's falling asleep and asks him to join them. Renya tries to calm her down, saying someone needs to stand guard, but Rona doesn't listen, falling asleep. Renya is furious, pinned between the girls, unable to move. He tries to wake them again. A fog swirled in the tent. Was someone attacking them? Renya's eyes closed. Someone was standing outside the tent. Zest's voice outside says that now is the perfect time to deal with them. The sorceress from Zest's group says it's impossible. The hypnosis magic can be destroyed by noise and pain, and they'll be in trouble if anyone finds out. Zest puts an arm around her shoulders and tells her not to be jealous. Renya tenses in the tent. Zest decides it would be funny to outrun them and set a trap. His group leaves, laughing. Renya breathes a sigh of relief as they leave. He could have defended himself, but the girls might have gotten into trouble. Shin, lying on top of him, suddenly wakes up, her eyes wide. A loud squeal erupts from their tent. In the morning, Renya, Hearts, and Az discuss how the Sharpfang had already packed up camp and disappeared, leaving them all behind. Hearts and his group were planning to destroy the core themselves. Shin, flushed and blushing, sits to the side, and Renya tells them to ignore her. Destroying the core offers a high reward, and since the dungeon is new, even a moderate group could clear it. Zest is quite experienced, so his appearance is only a matter of time. Hearts is surprised by Renya's calm about missing 10 coins. Renya says he wouldn't mind getting a reward just for sitting there. Az agrees. If necessary, they'll take matters into their own hands, deal with the remaining monsters, and try to avoid Zest's mistakes. Hearts asks if they'll help Zest's group, but Renya and Az refuse. There's no point in helping those who have chosen to die voluntarily. Even if Zest's group simply wounds the enemy, it's still a plus for them. Renier likes Az's way of thinking. Az and Hearts leave, and Rona asks if this is okay. According to Hearts and others, they should see a sign by midday indicating the current situation. Renier's group had already decided to take the safe route. There was no need to get into trouble. Renya is getting ready to make breakfast. He asks Rona to help and call Shin, who is still blushing, to the side. They gather at the table. Renya, lost in thought, looks away. He approaches Az, asking about Hearts. It turns out his group went into the dungeon after Zest. Well, at least now they can all relax. Renya offers to share some food with Az and his comrades. They ask if he really has enough food for 5 more people. Renya says they have a void storage, so their supplies are unlimited and they can cook enough for everyone. Az wants to make a deal in exchange for breakfast and lunch. He has no doubt about Renya's good intentions, but he doesn't want to accept handouts. Renya agrees, asking for terms. Az offers to teach him the Fire Bullet spell. It's a good offer, but it doesn't seem worth it to Renya. Az says it's worth the opportunity to eat well in such a place. He asks Renya to cook something delicious for her comrades. Renya agrees. After the meal, Az takes Renya aside. He places his hand on his forehead and grants him a Fire Bullet. He instructs Renya to activate it, and Renya will now be able to use it if he has enough magical energy. Az asks how often Renya can use the light. The first time Renya used it, he blacked out. Then he spent 2 days in the room, deliberately practicing, and eventually got the hang of it. Now he can create 16 beams of light per minute for an hour. A total of 960 times. I'm shocked, isn't Renya a swordsman? Carol told Renya he has no talent for magic, but if he trains, even he can get a little better. Az sighs and tells him to lie more realistically, but Renya isn't lying. Her magical energy reserves can indeed be increased. Az casts the light and his finger lights up. He says he would have run out of steam after just 100 uses, and if Renya is telling the truth, his magical energy is almost 10 times greater than Az's. Magical energy can indeed be increased through training, but not in a single day, and it still won't increase 100-fold. Az asks if Renya can use high-level magic like parallel spells. Renya isn't sure, but he's tried a silence spell. Az laughs. It's a good joke, but he advises Renya not to blab about it to everyone, lest he be taken for an idiot. Renya recalls the abilities the goddess gave him in the beginning. Perhaps that's what it all comes down to. Az says that if he can summon 2 or 3 beams of light, he can use a fire bullet, but it shouldn't be too small. Renya thanks him for the advice and calls him Sensei. Az asks to simply call him Az. Renya calls him by his first name. He asks if the first group has been in the dungeon for too long. It's new, and clearing it shouldn't take that long. They look at the entrance to the dungeon. A strange energy swirls at the entrance. Deep in the dungeon, someone laughs. An unknown man sits at the table, grinning. He watches Renya and Az's groups descend into the dungeon. It seems more victims are coming. Both groups gather at the entrance to the dungeon. Before they enter, Renya wants to clarify their purpose. Shin says to first complete the quest, then find the missing groups. Rona believes they should help find them first. Renya says they don't know if something happened to them and they're inexperienced, so they shouldn't take on too much. Az agrees. If the other groups are defeated, it's logical for them to retreat. Az says part of the quest was eliminating several groups from the guild. Renya is shocked, but Az is just joking. The people of this world frighten Renya. Renya asks if Az is okay with him leading the group. After the incident at the tavern, Az is convinced that Renya's rank is above F and he acted reasonably with hearts, so he's okay with it, and so is his group. Renya and Shin will lead the way. Rona and Az will be in the center, surveying the area with spells. The other 4 will provide cover. Once everyone is ready, they begin their descent into the dungeon. They gradually explore the dungeon, Renya leading the way with a torch. He also uses the light to illuminate the way. So far, they don't see anything strange, which is to be expected for a new dungeon. Renya wonders if Zest might have set traps. Suddenly, Az spots something ahead. It's a large door, but it's too far from the entrance. Demons usually hide behind doors like that, but there shouldn't be any in the new dungeon. Renya notices blood on the ground. It's dried, but there's a lot of it. Perhaps it's from the groups that descended here earlier. It's entirely possible. After all, the road leads here directly from the entrance. Or it could be the enemy's blood. The answer lies behind these doors. Shin can't believe Zest and Hearts were defeated. Renya nods. But it seems that's exactly what happened, because there's a bad presence outside the door. Renya smirks, trying to hide it behind her hand. This doesn't prove anything yet. It's too early to back out. She needs to find something that will help her figure this all out. Shin says they need to go inside. The others nod decisively. Renya agrees, but if he thinks things are getting dangerous, they'll come back immediately. Shin and Renya open the doors. A foul smell comes from inside. It smells like rotten meat. Renya tells them to be on guard and they enter. For some reason, the light is on in the room, but there's no electricity here. They spot a silhouette ahead. The man rises from his desk and walks toward them. He grins menacingly, welcoming them into his lab like guinea pigs. He has dark skin and purple hair, apparently a demon. But what is he doing here? Demons live on the central continent. Demons have superior magical powers to humans, and Rona says they can't defeat him. Renya and Az exchange glances, realizing they have to leave. The demon asks if they're already walking. Isn't that rude of them? Everyone tenses at his tone. Shin asks where the 11 people who passed through here earlier are, and Renya tries to stop her. The demon pauses. He smirks and says he didn't see anyone. Shin yells at him not to lie, and Renya steps in front of her. He asks where the previous 11 guinea pigs are. The remaining adventurers are shocked. The demon chuckles, finding Renya amusing. Now he understands. The demon pulls Zest's half-decomposed corpse out of the wall. This must be what they were looking for. Everyone freezes in horror. The demon created this dungeon to gather material, and he collected enough to advance his research. Today, in particular, a large amount of material was collected, 11 in total. The reanimated corpses of missing adventurers continue to emerge from the walls, and Renya prepares to defend herself. For the demon experiments, they need them alive, so even though they look like this, they're still alive and sane. He tells Rainier and the others not to be afraid, as they'll join them soon. Their crippled comrades advance toward them, snarling. Renya orders everyone to retreat, and Shin freezes in place. The others rush to the door, but it is filled with some dark substance. She melts the shield of one of the adventurers. The demon explains that these monsters love iron as well as blood. Rainier and his companions must retreat, but the door is blocked, meaning they'll have to kill the demon. Rona calls out to him, pointing to Zest approaching Shin. A mutilated skeletal Zest mumbles a silent plea for help, and Shin trembles in terror. Renya stands before her and swings her sword. He cuts off Zest's head, and Shin stands in shock. The demon watches them with a smirk. Renya screams that they can't be saved. If you keep worrying about the dead, they'll only swell their ranks. Shin realizes he's right, and Renya leaves her to deal with them. He orders Azu to cover them with defensive magic and orders Rona to be ready with healing spells. He takes on the demon himself, shouting a fire bullet spell. He fires 8 shots at the demon at once. Shin and Rona are surprised by his magical attack, and Az is also shocked by the number of simultaneous shots. The demon casts a spell on the shield, and the bullets disperse against it. The demon is surprised that Renya is both a swordsman and a mage. Renya realizes that the fire bullet is useless against a direct attack. The demon offers Renya a magical duel. He casts Air Blade, sending a spell at Renya. Renya tenses, her rapid succession of attacks threatening to cut him down. Memories of some battle flash through her mind. Renya swings her sword, the demon screams in shock. Renya destroyed his air blades. The demon doesn't understand how this is possible or what kind of sword it is. Taking advantage of the enemy's hesitation, Renya rushes in for the attack. The demon begins casting a spell. Renya stabs him with her sword. The demon's severed arm flies off. Renya doesn't understand why the demon didn't defend itself. A blow like that should have killed it. The demon laughs. He was very interested in Renya's sword and Renya in his body. As expected from another world, it would cause him a lot of trouble. The goddess and Jiriel watch the battle between Renya and the demon. Jiriel is shocked and furiously asks what it is. She turns to the goddess and asks how this sword destroyed magic, a property only sacred objects possess. His shinai was such an object, so where did he get another one? The goddess tells her to be quiet. The goddess thought it was a bit awkward to give him a shinai. It was just a bamboo sword. It would be absurd for it to be super strong. And then it occurred to her that she wouldn't be surprised if a katana was super strong. Besides, a katana usually requires careful maintenance, but if it's indestructible, that's not necessary. Wasn't she a genius? Being a generous goddess, she decided to arm him well, so she sent Gomil. She also took away the shinai's indestructibility. Jiriel grips the shinai until it cracks. She cries out that she can't relax because of the goddess's whims, and her name is Jiriel. The goddess tells her to calm down and forget about the shinai. No one will suspect anything with a katana, and Renya is good with it. She also gifted Renya with a good work ethic. The rest is just a matter of time. That's why Jiriel is worried. The demon has never seen anything like it before. Does the sword have some special ability? Renya reflected his magic, which was interesting. The demon asks to see the sword. Renya refuses. He says he traded it to a traveling merchant and let him seek her out if he's interested. The demon shrugs, complaining that Renya is so annoying. It would be easier if he agreed, but it seems there's no other choice. A force of some kind erupts from the stump of his arm, and Renya watches in shock as his arm grows back together. What a pain! The demon could say the same thing about him and rushes to attack. Renya holds her sword in front of her. Since the demon can regenerate, dismembering it is useless. Renya fires several fire bullets at him. The demon is surprised by the instantaneous activation without the use of a spell, but it's nothing to him. Renya takes a swing. He strikes the demon in the chin from below with his empty sheath and prepares to strike again. With a katana, he cuts the demon in half. The demon's body splits in two and he falls to the ground. Renya approaches his upper half. The demon groans helplessly. Renya swings and cuts off its head. He plunges the sword into his forehead between the eyes, breathing out heavily. Is it over? Rona and Shin are strolling down the street. Kukuriku is flooded with reports of demon and monster attacks, so there are plenty of adventurers here. They approach the bulletin board. Shin is eagerly reading information about the groups Sharp Fang and Crimson Guardians. There's so much to learn if you take on this quest. Shin looks at the mutilated adventurers, her hands trembling as she holds the sword. She grits her teeth and grips the sword more confidently. They must complete this task. Mentally apologizing and closing her eyes, she stabs one of the adventurers. The toxin builds up and Rona tells Shin to cover her so she can eliminate it with magic. Shin agrees. Rona notices that she's not feeling well. Renya sets the demon's severed body on fire. He wipes his sword. This katana exceeded his expectations. Despite its lightness, it is incredibly sharp and can even resist magic. Memories of the battle flash through her mind again. It's all unimportant now. Renya decides to think about it later. Shin fights the adventurers, covering Rona. Renya pierces one adventurer's head with her sword. It's the last one. The girls ask about the demon and Renya says he's already taken care of it. The girls stare in shock at the burning corpse. Shin can't understand how he defeated him so easily. Renya looks around for Az. Az casts a fire spell on the fallen adventurers. It's all over, but Az's comrades are wounded and he asks Rona to help them. Rona agrees, promising to check on Renya later. Renya notices something out of the corner of her eye. Tentacles emerge, striking Rona in the back, and Renya doesn't have time to react. Rona falls to the ground, blood trickling from her mouth. The tentacles writhe in the air and Renya doesn't understand what they are. The tentacles attack Shin and Aza and they both fall. The demon says he didn't expect Renya to push him to this point. Renya chuckles nervously. After all, he stabbed, decapitated, and burned the demon. The demon laughs and emerges from the wall, unharmed. Perhaps it wasn't his real body, but just a part of it. Renya calls him a pain in the ass. Someone calls out to Renya. He turns to see Shin struggling to stand. She appears to have blocked the demon's attack with her sword. The demon thought he'd knocked her out, but it doesn't matter. Tentacles wrap around Shin's leg and Rona's neck. Shin screams as she is lifted into the air, the girls finding themselves bound by tentacles. The demon calls Renya interesting. He likes him. He's a master swordsman, can cast spells wordlessly, and makes cold-blooded decisions unexpected for a human. Who is he, this god-chosen hero? Renya points her sword at him, but he doesn't understand what the demon is talking about or who he is. The demon remembers he forgot to introduce himself. The walls around him begin to disappear, the demon absorbing them. Now Renya understands. This entire room is part of a demon's body. Its body can take many forms to avoid fatal wounds. Its name is Renya, a mage scientist who has modified its body. Emil specializes in studying and modifying biological bodies, searching for new specimens every day. He wants to fully study Renya and make him his own. If Renya agrees, he will grant him a new, superior body. Renya rushes at him with her sword, and he cuts through the tentacles holding Rona and Shin. He tries to strike Emil, but he dodges, the sword cutting off only the small tip of the tentacle behind his back. Renya refuses his offer, retching at the thought of a man touching his body. Emil declares Renya dangerous, attacking without responding. He had planned to use these two women for his experiment, but now he wants to study Renya thoroughly. Emil's legs grow into tentacles, and he grins. Now everything is ready to continue his battle with Renya. He attacks Renya with 3 tentacles at once. Renya dodges. Emil grins. Suddenly it becomes dark. Renya gets lost. A tentacle hits him in the side. Renya jumps back, clutching her side. A piece of armor has fallen off. Emil is dangerous. He turned off the light and used ink, but Renya managed to avoid it. Renya curses. Even the light is part of Emil. Renya fires 2 beams of light. Emil's tentacles are problematic. He controls their speed, direction, and attack power. It would be bad if they hit Renya. Shin managed to block his attack, but Az and Rona were directly wounded and needed help quickly. Az's group was still poisoned and unable to fight. The situation couldn't be worse. The boys will have to endure it until he finishes off Emil. Emil understands that Renya only has light and fire bullet spells. These are basic ones, but the way Renya uses them is irritating. Emil tells Renya not to underestimate him and attacks with his tentacles. Renya tries to dodge his swift strikes. He quickly runs around Emil and leaps at him with his sword. Emil notes his speed and uses his air blade. Renya blocks the spell with her sword, but it is thrown back. He lands on his feet. Emil smirks. Renya isn't the only one here who can use magic without casting spells. Renya wanted to attack from above, but as soon as he gets close, Emil uses magic. He'll have to move step by step. He needs to keep attacking. Jiriel asks if everything is alright. Isn't it too early for Renya to be facing the demon? The goddess tells her not to worry. Renya is fine and he has her blessing. Jiriel notes that the demon isn't even fighting seriously. Perhaps Renya has forgotten how to use his power, or was he like this in his past life and doesn't use his blessings? It seemed his high magical and physical abilities were the result of a blessing, but it turns out they weren't. The goddess asks why Jiriel didn't check the files herself. She says she thought it was because of the blessing. Renya severs the tentacle. Renya Kanugi is the 14th heir to the Iitoryu style of the Kanugi school. By the age of 13, he had become the school's finest swordsman. At 15, he traveled to China and learned stealth and assassination techniques there. He was part of one of the most feared armed groups in the world. He killed so many people that his very name inspired fear. He then fought in the First World War and killed hundreds. By this point, standing atop a mountain of countless corpses he'd slain with just his katana, everyone recognized his diabolical power. Everyone, enemies and comrades, nicknamed him the Devil's Swordsman. For his service, he received many military awards and was sent to the battlefield many times. He's 1 in 56 billion, so they have nothing to worry about. Jiriel asks skeptically if the goddess really wants to save the world. Renya asks if that's all demons can do. Emil calls him a thorn, then smirks, leaving Renya perplexed. Emil shouts that Renya is amazing and asks to show him more. He wants to continue enjoying the team. Renya thinks he's crazy. But Renya is the same. Emil encourages him to continue. Renya stands up and tells him to shut up. He plans to finish it all with the next attack. Emil smirks. If Renya is going to attack him with all her might, then Emil will go all out too. His body changes, his arms transforming into a multitude of tentacles, each ending in a toothy maw. Renya is shocked. Emil attacks with all his might, urging Renya to continue, wanting to see what he'll do. Renya runs at him with a sword. He leaps up and slashes through several tentacles. Emil is fed up with this attack and activates his air blade. Renya prepares to defend herself. Renya used his sword to deflect the attack but left his back exposed. Emil aimed his fanged tentacles at him. Renya used light. 16 simultaneous flashes. Emil turns away from the bright light, trying to blind him. He doesn't understand what Renya is planning. Renya calls out to him. Emil didn't notice Renya was behind him, raising his sword. Emil tries to use an air blade, but it's too late. Renya slashes him twice with her sword. Emil is cut in half, blood flying everywhere. Emil tries to regenerate. Renya continues to attack with her sword and uses a fire bullet. The remains of Emil's body are instantly engulfed in flames. Emil is lying on the floor and Renya approaches him. Emil asks if Renya knew what attack he was planning. Renya says no, he just needed an opening. Now he'll kill him. It looks like Emil has lost, a demon losing to a human and one who only uses basic spells at that. Funny. Renya tells him not to beg for mercy and to be grateful for a quick and painless death. Since Emil can't regenerate, there will be nothing left of him. Renya raises her sword over him, but Emil begins to speak again. Emil says that's exactly why he fell in love with him. Renya is completely confused. It's impossible not to fall in love with Renya, that cold gaze devoid of regret, Emil's body trembling. He slowly regenerates as he speaks. It's a shame Renya is human, but Emil can turn him into a demon and then Renya will belong to him. Renya plunges her sword into him. Emil asks to be allowed to finish. Renya doesn't want to hear him anymore, it's disgusting. He wishes Emil would simply die. Bleeding, Emil offers him a deal. Emil is no longer a fighter, he has no strength left. It seems trying to claim Renya was a bad idea and he must surrender. Renya still has enough strength to kill him, but his comrades are wounded and poisoned. Will they last long enough for Renya to reach the city? Renya realizes he's right, his friends will die if he abandons them. Emil, however, has everything he needs to keep them alive. If Renya lets him go alive, he'll heal them so they can reach the city. He'll also give Renya the dungeon core, as destroying it was Renya's original goal. Renya can't trust him after what he did to the other adventurers. Emil says it's his right, but he shouldn't worry because Emil only wants him now. And even if he turns his friends into zombies and forces them to attack him, Renya is still immune to the poison. Rainier needs to decide before it's too late. He must understand that he can't save them now and he can't abandon them either. That's why Emil wants to hug him. He sits up, his body almost completely restored. He also prepared another body to keep Renya's group from finding out, as he wants to touch Renya. Renya finds him disgusting. Renya points a sword at him. Emil seems too generous to him and he also said he's not interested in people. Emil says Renya is special and he's fallen in love with him. Dying at his hands wouldn't be so bad. But what will Renya do then? His friends lie wounded and unconscious. Renya remembers how the girls invited him to join the group and how they thanked him. He grins and lowers his sword. He has one condition: let Emil help them drag them to the wagons. Shin slowly comes to. She appears to be in a carriage. Renya is leading the horses. She rises abruptly but immediately writhes in pain. Renya notices she's awake and tells her not to worry as he's dealt with the demon and destroyed the core. He shows her the shard. He didn't plan this, but the reward will be greater. Shin is at a loss. They're heading to the city now. They're almost at Kukurika. Shin's wounds aren't deep, but she needs to rest. Shin remembers how she was attacked, thanks Renya, and lies back down. Rona is resting nearby. Shin blushes and purses her lips. It looks like Renya saved her again. Renya, Rona, Shin, and Az are sitting in the tavern. Renya explains that he sent a report about the demon to the guild and also sent the dungeon core, receiving a substantial reward. He was given the reward for 4 groups, 34 gold, 60 for the core, and 6 for the information about the demon, for a total of 100 gold. Az says he wasn't asking about that. He's thinking about how he didn't expect this from an F-ranker. Renya is both a swordsman and a mage, and he killed the demon with only basic spells. Who is he? Emil has finished healing Renya's friends. Now they need to be loaded onto the wagons. Renya examines the shard in her hands. It is the magic stone, the dungeon's core. Emil says he is the true core, but this is a good substitute. People won't notice it's not a core. He again invites Renya to come with him, promising an unforgettable experience, but Renya sends him away. Renya really does scare him, but Emil likes her. He'll look forward to their next meeting. Renya thinks he's genuinely annoying and he hopes he won't get into trouble. Az doesn't want to force Renya to tell him, but he asks if he's sure he wants to split the reward. Renya says they took care of the zombies and Az taught him the fire bullet, without which he would have had a hard time. Separately, they would certainly be dead. Just as Az is grateful to his group members, Renya wants to thank them all. Besides, they don't really need the gold, but Az will. Rona is displeased. Az is about to part ways with his group. They've had enough of all the adventures. The last mission was too much. They're just ordinary villagers and it would be better for them to return to their old work and the gold will help them. Renya says it's for the best. Az thanks them. He really appreciates it. Renya asks what Az himself is going to do. If he has nowhere to go, he can join them. Az says he's already been invited to teach at the Adventurer Training Academy in Kyukuriku. Most of the people there come from wealthy families and the goal is to develop their potential. In reality, few will become adventurers. Az can't join Renya. But if they ever need help, they can count on him. Renya is glad to hear it. He says that Az can also contact them if anything happens. They shake hands and say goodbye. Renya isn't sure she should say this, but they don't have enough money for a house, do they? Rona says that's exactly it. She's upset that Renya decided to be a good guy. They could have kept the gold for themselves. Renya apologizes. Rona falls asleep at the table. She's used up too much healing magic. Renya notices that Shin is very quiet, but she seems to have fully recovered. Suddenly, Shin stands up abruptly, shouting his name. She blushes and hesitates, but still asks if Renya will date her. Renya and Rona are shocked. Renya and Shin go to the hermit's tomb. Renya tells Shin she needs to be more careful with her words, or Rona might have misunderstood. Shin blushes and says it couldn't have meant anything else. It took a lot of effort to get Renya to practice with her. Suddenly, she realizes the double meaning of her words, blushing even more and muttering excuses. She didn't mean it that way. She can't be with Renya, but it's not because of him. It's just that it would get in the way. She didn't help in the dungeon. She can never help. Renya doesn't think that's true. That's why Shin wants to get stronger so she can fight alongside him. So she wants Renya to train her, which is admirable. Shin tells him not to laugh at her, but Renya is serious. He admires her determination. Renya takes a sword stance, challenging Shin to try to wound him at least once. If he succeeds, he will take over her training. Shin agrees. Shin attacks, crossing swords with Renya. Rona strolls through the city, humming and buying groceries. Renya comments on Shin's fight. Shin is too slow and makes unnecessary movements. She needs to attack faster, study her opponent's movements, and not strike mindlessly. She should only attack when she's absolutely certain she can handle it. Shin breathes heavily, listening to his advice. She'd attacked so many times already and Renya wasn't even scratched. Although they'd never fought each other, he seemed to read her movements. How many battles had Renya been through before? Renya tells her to focus, continuing to instruct her. It's starting to take its toll on him, too. He smirks. Shin must be tired of these one-sided attacks. Renya prepares to attack. Now it's his turn to attack. This is what Shin wanted. Suddenly, a large rock crashes into the cliff next to them. They both look around in bewilderment, seeing a huge ogre with an axe walking toward them. He shouldn't be here. Shin says ogres aren't usually particularly strong and even she can defeat them, but she's never seen one this big. So this is an opponent Shin hasn't encountered before. Renya steps aside, sitting down on a rock and leaning on her sword like a cane, a habit. The ogre roars deafeningly. Shin looks back at Renya in panic. Renya says this is a great opportunity for her to gain experience. Shin realizes he's right. But then she starts whining that it's impossible. She only has her training sword with her and the other one is in Renya's storage. Renya tells her to hurry, the ogre is running out of patience. Shin grits her teeth and takes a stance before the ogre. She mustn't make excuses, she needs to get stronger. Even if it's just a little bit, she wants to reach Renya. She dodges the axe strike and swings back at the ogre. The blow doesn't harm the ogre, the sword is worn out from training. Shin attacks again. Renya watches them. Shin is rather clumsy, but she moves well and tracks her opponent's movements. She needs strength to wield a sword without a blade. Shin strikes the ogre with her sword. It's shallow, but she manages to wound him, though his skin and muscles make it difficult. If only she could strike him in the head, but the ogre is too tall. Jumping would be dangerous, and her sword won't hold up for long. What should she do? She remembers Renya advising her to study her opponent's movements. The ogre raises his axe over her. Shin hits him in the knee and dodges his massive hand. Renya watches her in surprise. Shin finally began to analyze her opponent's movements and realized what she needed to do. The ogre had trouble reaching her with horizontal attacks. To fight the small opponent, she needed to use vertical attacks, but to do so, he'd have to duck. We need to take advantage of this opportunity and finish him off. Shin attacks the ogre's eyes, then jumps and raises her sword over her head to strike. With all her might, she brings the sword down on the ogre's head. The ogre falls to the ground as Shin tries to catch her breath. Exhausted, she falls to the ground, lamenting that the ogre shouldn't have been there. Renya plunges her sword into the still-defeated ogre. She can't let up her guard until she's dealt the finishing blow. Shin says he's being too strict. He could have praised her. Renya congratulates her on nearly screwing up. Renya extends her hand, asking if she can stand up and offering to carry her if she's tired. Shin blushes and takes his hand, then suddenly strikes him across the forehead with her broken sword. She actually managed to hit him. She laughs. Isn't not letting your guard down one of the cardinal rules? Renya rubs her forehead, slightly irritated. So Renya will be training her now, let her stand here. Shin asks for a rest and she doesn't have a sword. Renya says she was quite energetic a second ago. Rona meets them outside while Renya is carrying Shin on his back. He seems to have exhausted her. Renya says she's been a bit brazen and he decided to put her in her place. He tells Rona about the ogre at the hermit's tomb, and Rona says it's strange. It's worth reporting this to the guild just in case. And they also need to sell the magic stone the ogre dropped. They need the money for a house. Rona remembers noticing a house while wandering around town. It's abandoned, so she might as well go check it out. Renya is surprised. They seem to be outside the Kukuriki shopping area. Renya, Shin, and Rona are standing at the gate of a house, the house Rona mentioned. Renya and Shin seem to like it. Renya asks how she found it. Someone told Rona about the house and she thought it would be perfect for them. Renya tells Shin that she and Rona can explore the house themselves. Shin starts to complain that they're members of the same group and this could be their base, so she goes along. They open the door. They walk around the house looking it over. Renya is delighted when she sees a real, proper bathtub. After the tour, everyone meets at the entrance. The rooms are a bit large, but otherwise everything is fine. Rona says the house belonged to a wealthy merchant, but there's plenty of space for the three of them and that's nothing to complain about. Renya is happy with everything, especially the bathroom. A house usually costs 60 coins, but they can pay 40 and go earn more since they only have 60. Right now, it's the only way to buy a house. Renya doesn't know much about real estate, but she asks Rona if that's why the price dropped. Rona giggles, confirming that she thinks it's a great deal. They leave the house. Rona asks what Shin thinks. Shin likes everything. So it's decided. Rona and Renya begin setting up camp in the courtyard. Shin is confused. Haven't they paid for the house yet? Renya is surprised. She doesn't know. It seems this house is haunted. Apparently, if you try to inhabit it, the ghosts won't let you go, which is why the price is so low. I need to check if this is true. Shin screams in horror that it's impossible. She rushes to hug Renya. She doesn't want to live in the house if there are ghosts there. It's better to go home. Renya asks Rona what's going on. Rona thought Shin said something. Renya realizes she did it on purpose. We share. Renya tries to pry the whining Shin away, not understanding what she's afraid of. Monsters are far more dangerous than ghosts. Shin says ghosts can't be killed. Rona begins to tell a story in a terrifying voice. A wealthy merchant once lived here with his beautiful wife, son, and servants. He treated his employees and customers well, sold things at fair prices, and many wanted to work with him. Time passed, his reputation improved, and it seemed their happiness would last forever. But even on the sunniest days, abductions continued in Kukurek, where countless people were kidnapped. They mostly kidnapped teenage girls, and all the merchant's employees were men. One night, a young man was waiting for his girlfriend, a maid, to come home from work. She promised to meet him right after. He waited and waited, but she didn't come. He assumed she was still at work and decided to go there to surprise her. He snuck into the house and saw a window, and in it, a man torturing a tied-up girl. Shin screams and clings tighter to Renya. The boy saw a man with scissors and his girlfriend's corpse, along with a pile of other people's body parts. The man was caught, and the ghosts of the murdered girls. Renya tries to calm Shin down so she won't disturb the neighbors. Shin twitches. She heard something. Renya wants to say that it is her imagination, but now she and Rona hear strange sounds. Fog and some shadows begin to swirl around. The shadows take on the silhouettes of the girls. Shin continues to cling to Renya. Renya calmly examines the ghostly girls. Rona folds her hands in a gesture of supplication. She doesn't sense their presence. Shin doesn't understand why they're so calm. Renya says it's her who's shaking. He draws his sword and unsheaths it. Let's see if ghosts really can't be killed. He attacks the ghost, Shin clinging to him and screaming. The ghost dissipates into thin air. Renya realizes he can cut them. It feels strange, like when he blocked magic. Is it because of the sword? If Renya can kill them, he doesn't care. The ghosts don't seem to be planning to attack, but they're too noisy. Once they're done with these, they'll clean out the house too. Let Rona and Shin check the garden and call if they find anyone else. Rona had almost gotten used to Renya's behavior. Renya tells Shin to let him go or she might kill them. Shin says she's not feeling well and can't stand on her own, asking Renya not to abandon her. Renya gets irritated, telling her to let go again. Ultimately, he sends Rona away alone, and Rona tells them to have some fun. Renya carries Shin on her back and goes into the house with her. He continues hacking down ghosts with her. It's a bit boring, no resistance. Shin is glad to be in the same group with Renya and apologizes for causing trouble again. Renya says she's always apologizing. Renya kills the ghost, apparently the last one. Shin asks if they buy the house, will Renya leave the group? Renya says yes, that's his goal, but it's hardly worth doing now since he's broke. He needs to pay the rent, and to do that, he needs to find a way to earn money. For now, he wants to focus on paying off the rest of the house and then see how profitable being an adventurer can be. Shin smiles, pleased with this answer. Renya suggests she get down already. Shin gasps and gets to her feet herself. They hear a scream. It seemed to be Rona's voice. Shin trembled and hugged Renya's hand. Renya sighed. The sound seemed to be coming from the hallway. They descended the stairs and cautiously peered through the door. A little girl with pointy ears is lying on the floor in the room. Renya and Shin look at her in shock. Is she an elf? They come closer. Renya takes the girl by the shoulders. The girl is unconscious. They look at her pointed ears. Rona enters the room, asking what they're doing there. She notices the girl on the floor and her eyes widen. She notices that none of her friends' clothes are wrinkled, and what could one expect from Renya? Rona is disappointed. Shin says they found the elf unconscious. Rona seems to have heard rumors about her in town. She looks like an elf, has pointy ears, and wears a maid's uniform. She lives in an abandoned house, chasing away intruders. She must be a Shirok. Renya reads in the window that appears that Shiroks are a type of fairy or spirit, usually childlike, who guard their habitats. When someone invades their territory, they repel them with magic or illusions. The text changes to a message from the goddess, saying that a guy attacking a little girl is no better than trash. Is the goddess really watching them? Shin says she thinks she's read about Shuruki. If the Shuruki like you, they bring you happiness, otherwise they might attack you. Rona confirms. The ghosts are probably her doing. Shin is glad that ghosts don't really exist. Renya concludes that the girl is a domovoi of this world. Renya helps her up, asking how she is, and the girl opens one eye. She looks around at the people gathered around her and then, frightened, breaks free from Renya's arms. She cries and screams at them to leave her house. Renya says they won't hurt her, but the girl, cowering at the table, looks at him incredulously. Renya introduces himself, explaining that he's an adventurer and would like to settle here. The girl says she was born here, this is her home, and only her master can live here. Renya says the master of the house has long been dead, and the girl freezes in shock. The girl says she has no memories of her master at all. She was apparently born after the merchant's death. Shuruki lived to carry out their master's orders, but she never had one, so protecting the house became her primary and only task. The girl may be without a master, but she must protect this house, so she asks them to leave again. She cries and trembles. Renya says she's very weak, but is she sure she can cope and live without a master? The girl mutters that it's unlikely. She used up all her magic creating the Satsuki, those ghosts. Renya and the girls feel uneasy. Renya must have done something he shouldn't have. He asks if he can become the master of this house, surprising the girl. If she lets Renya take over the house, he'll make it even better than it is now. He promises everything will be fine and she won't regret it, mentally not wanting to return to the disgusting inn. Shin and Rona say that sounds disgusting. Renya asks the girl what she thinks. The girl couldn't protect the house and no longer has the strength. The house's magic has also reached its limit. Will Renya really take care of the house? Renya promises, assuring her that she can be sure of it. The girl smiles and extends her hand to him. They shake hands. She asks him as her new owner to take care of her. After 2 days, the house sparkles with cleanliness. It no longer looks haunted. Although some things did have to be changed, Rona paid for them out of her own pocket. She says it's okay, it's all for the house, even if she's left completely penniless. Renya promises to pay her back, and yet, it's wonderful here. Everything has changed in just a couple of days. A Shiroki approaches them, declaring that this is natural. She smiles, carrying a tray of tea. Thanks to her master's magic, her energy has increased 1,000-fold. Shiroki borrow magical power from their masters to protect the house. Previously, she had gathered magic from the garden, so this was her limit. Shin has a bad feeling about that magic. The girl confirms with a smile that it was the magic of those killed here, so there were ghosts here after all. Shin clings to Rona. Renya says that thanks to the Shiroki, they'll be able to move in tomorrow, but she says it's too early. There's something else important to do first. The girl wants a name. She doesn't want to be called just Shiroki any longer. Renya starts going through names out loud. Rona and Shin ask if he really wants to name her like a pet, but Renya snaps. Shin gets an idea and whispers in Renya's ear that she reminded them of the fairies from her book. Renya nods. He asks little Frau Verd to take care of them and strokes her head. After everything that happened, they finally have a home. I'm sitting on the sofa in the living room of Renya's house. He notices that they've bought themselves a nice house. He's even a little envious that they, so young, can afford such a mansion. Frau Verd wishes them a good time, bowing and running off. Besides the house, they've also received Shiroki, a pair of shawls, as a bonus. Renya leans back in her chair with a sigh. Besides, they now have a sizable debt, and unlike Az, they don't have stable jobs, so they'll have to take on dangerous adventurer missions. Az actually came to ask for a favor. As Renya knows, Az has started teaching at an adventurer's school, and he had a problem with one of his classes. During a training session, his fellow teacher lost a one-on-one fight, and now the students are skipping class. This is rare, but that's not the point. Most of the teachers, like Az, have lost their group. Some have even left the adventurers due to injuries or other reasons. And yet, even so, they wouldn't lag behind 15 or 16 students. But here they have to deal with children from noble families whose courts have elite wizards and soldiers. Some children have already been trained by their parents. There are even students gifted physically or magically, far more talented than ordinary people. It's hard to teach those stronger than you. Renya asks, what does Az want? Renya breaking their noses. In a way, that's true. Renya doesn't seem to care, nor does Azza, even though he's supposed to protect the adventurer's honor. Azza says their attitude leaves much to be desired, with students skipping classes and other activities. Although the teacher is supposed to win, Az's group has always acted as a shield for the mages as they are defenseless in one-on-one combat. So Az thought Renya would be a good fit, as he's a swordsman but can also cast spells. Renya realizes Az is hiding something and asks if the defeated colleague was a swordsman. She's a girl, a D-ranker when she was an adventurer. She wouldn't lose in a fight on equal terms. Renya realized that if an F-ranker beat them, the D-ranker would also rise in their estimation. A good plan. Of course, this is not for free. Chief Azza will pay him a gold coin, and Renya will be able to use the school equipment, including the transport gates. This is a magical structure that allows one to travel anywhere using a magical stone. Using mana stones, one can move body parts between specific gates. Although transporting an entire person requires a large amount of mana stones, if all conditions are met, it's possible to travel across the entire human continent. It's also possible to bypass the central continent and travel directly to the elves' west. A useful thing, but I doubt Renya will need it right now. Az asks if he agrees. He might even ask for 2 coins. It doesn't seem like Renya's life is in any danger, and since Az is one of the few people Renya considers a friend, 1 coin will suffice. Az is delighted by his agreement, but Renya has one condition. As soon as everything is resolved, Az must tell him about his relationship with this colleague. Az snorts, blushing, giving himself away completely. Renya and Az pass through a large gate in a high stone wall. Renya remarks that it looks more like a fortress than a school. For starters, Kukurika is a trading city close to other continents, but it is also located on the border with the Demon Continent, so the school was equipped as a military base in case the city's outer wall collapses. And while everyone defends the fortress, the nobility will be able to escape through the expensive transport gates. They rise onto the wall above the training arena. The best magical techniques were applied to its 8 pillars. If you receive a fatal blow there, you'll be thrown out of the arena and all damage will be negated. A fight to the death is impossible. The doors creak open, revealing a group of laughing people. This is the problematic classroom. Combat training is about to begin. The girl with the short hair in the back is Riris, the teacher as mentioned and the one he likes. The upstarts in front are the ones who defeated her. The tall, loud guy is Auron Sh Mazar, the son of the palace general, and the arrogant blonde next to him is Natalia Fatal, the young lady of the family branch of Archduke Fatal, who runs the country. The name Fatal seems familiar to Rainier. Az asks Rainier to address their behavior. Their origins have had a strong impact on them. He is unusually stern. The two use their position to propose this scheme. Riris would have to fight every student, and after fighting each one with no respite when she was exhausted, they would confront her. They had rigged the whole thing. It was unlikely they would have defeated Riris in a fair fight. So Rainier just needs to rein in these 2 upstarts. Riris shouts at the students that it's the middle of class and they should listen to the teacher, but they continue laughing and chatting, ignoring her. They laugh, calling Riris a failure. Auron snorts and berates the school's principals, which hire incompetent scum like her. He should ask his father to close the school and redirect its efforts to training soldiers. Natalia says she has nothing to learn from such a weakling. Riris silently clenches his fists. She tries to ask them to be quiet again, but is interrupted. Renya says that this group is a bunch of dumb brats who only know how to exploit their position. The students look in confusion as Renya approaches, sword over his shoulder, scolding them for disobeying and causing Riris trouble. Riris is also confused. The students all ask who he is and where he came from. Maybe he's crazy. Riris also asks who he is, asking if Renya is just an adventurer as asked to help her. She's surprised, asking again about Mr. Az. Renya casts a surprised glance at Aza, who remains perched on the wall above him. He blushes, throwing his head back. Auron steps forward, declaring that it's very impudent to show up in class like that. Let the impudent fellow state his name. Renya introduces himself and states his rank. He's been asked to teach them a lesson because their behavior is out of line. The students laugh, calling him an F-rank weakling. They discuss how he must be even weaker than their dumb teacher. Auron asks if Renya is taking on too much and that they, the nobility, have nothing to learn from feeble-minded adventurers like them. Renya calmly tells them to stop, saying it's a waste of time. Only weaklings can boast about their family's name like that. The students are outraged. Renya says that Auron and Natalia simply cowardly fought Riris in the end, winning easily when she was exhausted. Auron and Natalia are indignant, shouting that he has no right to challenge their victory, that everything was fair and that the teacher is simply weak. Riris stands silently by. If Renya is wrong, let one of them fight him and not rely on their family's status to help. After all, they defeated rank D solely on their own abilities, right? Auron clenches his fists, accepting the challenge. Apparently, the feeble-minded adventurers don't understand words. Using the sword technique his father taught him, he will show Renya his place. Natalia encourages him to finish him quickly. Renya is disgusted by her. Renya is surprised they fell for such a provocation. Auron takes the sword and stands opposite Renya. They take up fighting stances and Auron asks if he's ready. Renya tells him to attack. Auron grins and charges with a cry. Renya strikes him in the forehead with lightning speed and easily jumps away. The students and Riris look on in shock. Renya freezes. He didn't expect this. Auron finds himself sitting against the wall in shock. No one understands anything. Did Auron lose? Renya asks Riris if that's all. She says Auron was thrown out of the arena, meaning he suffered fatal damage. Renya shakes her head, saying they won't understand anything like that. Auron rises to his feet, indignant, shouting that Renya is a bastard and used some kind of dirty trick and that doesn't count. Renya tuts, mentally calling him a slowpoke. He sighs, what a pain in the ass. Since Oren wasn't satisfied with that fight, let them all attack together. Renya will show them, the weaklings, their place. Oren and Natalia are shocked. Natalia says this plebeian has gone too far and deserves to die. The students surround Renya, swords at the ready. Oren shouts at them to not hold back and attack with clear killing intent. Renya remains calm. One of the students, screaming, lunges at Renya from behind, and Renya stops him with a blow to the head. Two more attack him. Renya quickly dispatches them, and another one tries to jump on him from above. Renya breaks his arm and takes his sword, the boy screaming in pain. One of the students nearby starts casting a spell. Renya throws a sword at him. It hits the student in the head. The girl standing next to him is horrified. Renya looks threatening. The students tremble and recoil. Riris is also scared. They do not understand who he is. Renya continues to fight the students, who scream. Oren and Natalia, frozen, watch in horror, listening to the screams of their comrades. One of the students crawls back, trembling. Natalia tries to yell at him, saying that Renya is only an F rank and doesn't understand what they're doing. The boy screams, terrified. Oren and Natalia prepare to attack, calling them worthless. Renya walks toward them. Oren flinches and instinctively retreats, frightened by just one glance. Renya lunges at him. Renya punches Oren in the face, sending him flying from the force of the blow and falling to the ground. No need to shit your pants or reveal yourself, they did say, with the clear intent to kill. Natalia watches in shock as Oren trembles on the ground. She calls him a loser too and lunges at Renya, sword drawn. Renya strikes her in the side and Natalia gasps. She falls to her knees, writhing in pain. Renya asks if that's all. Even the goblin is stronger. Just because she's some arrogant noblewoman, she didn't consider others human, so let him hold out against a mere F-rank like him. Natalia stutters, asking him not to come any closer, and Renya reaches out to her. If Renya were a demon, such leniency on his part would be a stroke of luck. He grabs Natalia by the collar and presses the blade to her throat. He's interrupted by Riris's scream from behind, begging him to stop. Trembling, she begs him to stop. Renya releases the frightened Natalia and walks away, agreeing that it was a good thing it was just a lesson. He points to Riris, saying that, unlike him, she kindly restrained herself. Az approaches them. He says Renya overdid it. He should have simply shown them the difference in strength. Renya snorts. He can't hold back, and the main thing is that the goal was achieved. The battered and injured students around him groan in pain. Renya says Az could have dealt with them himself since he doesn't like his methods. Serves them right. If they were real adventurers, they'd be dead by now. Riris wants to ask Mr. Azza something about Renya, but Renya takes a breath. He yells at Riris not to let some brats look down on her, even though she's a teacher. Natalia, behind Renya's back, glares at him with hatred. She asks if Renya really thinks she can leave after this. Renya takes off her armor. He doesn't give a damn about them. He turns around and warns that if they humiliate their teacher any further, he'll come back and teach them another lesson, this time outside the training arena. Natalia shudders, hiccuping with fear. Well, now they'll stop disrupting classes. Renya waves them goodbye, the feeble-minded adventurer washing his hands of the matter. They shouldn't call him to deal with such a tedious mess again, and they'd better hurry and take care of the wounded. He leaves the school and thinks about his debt. He should have asked for 2 gold coins. Kanuge's housekeeper Frau's day begins early. Frau Verd stretches as she gets out of bed. She looks out the window. It's such a beautiful morning. Her duties begin with preparing breakfast, chopping vegetables and throwing them into the pot. Her master taught her how to make this seasoning. And she also needs to wake everyone up when breakfast is ready. She needs to wake the master, but it's not that simple. She shakes the sleeping Renya. He snores. She laughs, a dark aura thickening around her. This is all just a cover. Frau Verd's real goal is to scare him like that. Then he jumps out of bed himself. It's so funny. Renya jumps away from her, grabbing her sword. He sighs. Frau does this every morning. It's tiring. She says it's his own fault because you can't wake him up. Shin's sister is also fast asleep. Frau tries to wake her, but Shin remains asleep, hugging her pillow and muttering Renee's name. Frau yanks the blanket off her. She throws ice into her underwear and leaves satisfied, having easily dealt with her. But even such a capable housekeeper has her share of difficulties in the mornings. She goes into the other room, telling Sister Rona to wake up. Rona sleeps in a nightgown that barely covers her large breasts. Frau is outraged by this indecency, wishing she could hit her little toe on the corner and fall. She restrains herself because Rona's sister is also her dear friend and she must wake them all with equal love. She tells her to wake up, squeezing her breasts with her palms. Rona groans in her sleep. She wakes up yawning and wishes Frau good morning. Frau smiles, mentally repeating her little finger curse. She leaves and the spirits following her offer to kill Rona, but she says they'll get it from their master. Rona feels a sudden chill. Frau Verd sees everyone out, wishing them a good day. Humming joyfully, she goes about her chores while her master is away. Thanks to the spirits living in the basement, cleaning doesn't take long and her master's mana makes the job much easier. Frau sighs, gazing thoughtfully at the sky and reaching out her hand. After dinner, Renya thanks her for the food. Frau runs up to him, asking to see them. She holds out several magic stones in her palms. Renya thinks she bought them, perhaps she's missing his mana. Frau Verd says otherwise, she's reached a new level and can now create magic stones. Frau has saved up her excess mana and tried to crystallize it. Isn't that wonderful? She uses his mana to keep the house running, the hot water, the cold storage, and everything else, but the owner has so much mana that there's still some left over. The owner is very resilient. Renya hits her to stop her from saying things that could be misunderstood. Still, Frau lost a lot of mana trying to crystallize, so the quality isn't very high. But if she continues training, her productivity and the quality of the stones will increase, and then their master will be able to use them. Renya suggests she use them as she wishes. Frau Verd says that's not right, they're from the master's mana, meaning they belong to him. He can use them to pay off his debt. Renya decides they can take a couple. Such an old man, yet he's made a child worry about his debts. He's relying on Frau. Rona and Shin decide not to interfere in their conversation. Renya strokes Frau's head and she smiles. She's ready to do anything for the master. That night, Frau finishes washing the dishes. The master is already asleep and she too is eager. She yawns. She stares out the window, frozen in place. It seems she has one more thing to do before bed. She leaves the house. Another important task of a housekeeper is to entertain guests, even rude ones who show up in the middle of the night, even uninvited guests. No one has informed them of such a late-night visit, but she'll still ask who it is. Silence followed. To let in such an impolite guest who hadn't even identified himself would be. Frau didn't have time to finish her sentence. A dagger plunged into her chest. She drew the poisoned dagger with a smile, taking that as an answer. The masked stranger hiding around the corner froze. The housekeeper, Frau, is obliged to entertain the guests, even despite their lack of manners. Let them enjoy themselves. Tentacles sprout from behind the uninvited guest. He barely has time to squeak. Frau returns to the house with a smile, her important task accomplished. Renya stands at the entrance with a sword, questioning the intruder. Frau smiles, replying that it's just a late guest. The owner didn't invite anyone, did he? Strange sounds echo outside the door. Renya says no, he assumes it's for him, probably related to those schoolchildren. Frau assures him there's nothing to worry about. She's already politely asked the guest to leave to hell. Renya praises her for her work. Renya leaves, he goes to bed and asks Frau to take care of the house, and she agrees. Frau Verd is a Shuroki, saved by the master, and she can continue to live in this house only thanks to him. She would do anything for the master and is grateful to him for this ordinary evening. Frau falls asleep with Renya on his bed, wishing him good dreams. Renya stands outside the Adventurers Guild, examining the quest board. There are no viable rewards there. Though they now have a ton of magic stones thanks to Frau, there's no hope of getting out of debt just yet. Renya heads for the exit. Apparently, the debt will have to be repaid in installments. Someone calls out to him from the sidelines. Jiriel greets him. They haven't seen each other in a while. Renya can't remember who it is. Yuriko, Jiriel corrects him with a strained smile. It's Kyrie. She's glad he remembers at least the Rai in her name. The one who named her no longer wants to pronounce it. Renya doesn't remember introducing himself to her last time, but Jiriel says he can't help but know him. The merchant's information network shouldn't be underestimated. She knows Renya is a ferocious F-rank who backs down from nothing, or that he single-handedly dispatched a demon, or that he beat up a bunch of rich kids, but there are a lot of rumors about him. These rumors are starting to irritate Renya. Jiriel asks how he likes the katana she gave him. Renya asks what it is. The katana is incredibly strong and can even cut through magic and spirits. Jiriel awkwardly explains that the katana came to her from far away. Perhaps it's enchanted with some kind of magic. She doesn't know. Renya doesn't understand what kind of merchant she is who doesn't know about her wares. He asks why she's here. Jiriel was just looking for him. She has a new task for the foreigner, Renya. Renya announces to Rona and Shin that they're going to the land of the elves. The girls are confused, not understanding what kind of quirk this is. Renya grits his teeth. It's not a quirk, he's always put up with his dissatisfaction. But that won't be anymore. He wants to eat rice, hot white rice. The girls don't understand what's wrong with him. What if he's contracted a mental disorder common to all foreigners? Renya slams the table. He's not crazy. Now that they've established Renya's well, Rona asks him to explain everything from the beginning. Jiriel offers to explain herself. The girls realize she's been sitting there this whole time, but who is she? Jiriel introduces herself as a super merchant traveling the world named Kyrie. Rona is surprised, a female merchant. Jiriel recently ran into Renya by chance and shared a business proposal with him. Renya shouts, surprised that there's rice here, asking her to tell him where to get it. Jiriel is stunned by this reaction. She herself only recently learned about this. It turns out that what foreigners call rice exists in this world too. But here it's called aloes, and here, on the eastern continent, it's rare and difficult to obtain. But aloes is a product of the western continent, and it's not all that rare on the elven continent. Elves eat almost no meat, so they have a well-developed agriculture, growing a wide variety of things. If Renya were to visit the elves, he'd see rice. And not only that, Jiriel says they also grow elf beans, which might be the same thing Renya calls soybeans. If Renya gets her hands on soybeans, making miso and soy sauce won't be just a dream anymore, and it'll be possible to eat it with hot rice. Renya needs to calm down. He still doesn't know how to get to the elves. It's a long way on foot. They'll have to go through the central continent. He remembers Az's story about the transport gate. It seems Renya has found a way to get there. He never thought they'd need the transport gate so soon. Now we can talk business. Renya isn't the only one interested in elves. Kyrie is too, and to expand her inventory, she wants Renya to take her through the transport gate. She might even buy the magic stones from him. On this continent, Renya is the one who craves rice more than anyone else, and she offers him a wonderful opportunity. Jiriel thinks it's a pretty good deal. Renya agrees. He won't even ask where she got all this information. Let him think rice. Jiriel laughs awkwardly. And here they are. Rona only realized that Renya desperately wants aloes. Shin says he lost all his cool in a matter of seconds. Shin hadn't expected Renya to have connections at the school, but wouldn't they need a ton of magic stones? Even if they started hunting now, it would take too long. Renya said it wouldn't be a problem and called Frau, who immediately came running. She dumped a pile of magic stones in front of them. The girls are shocked at how he got so many magic stones. Using the transport gate requires the equivalent of a gold coin, 30 magic stones. With that amount, they'd all have enough for a round-the-world trip and still have some left over. Could Renya have made them from his own mana? Frau says the owner tried so hard, draining himself of mana until he nearly passed out. The girls say he's an idiot. Renya is angry. They don't know how many people are willing to sacrifice their lives for a grain of rice. Let them apologize. Jiriel thinks he's just being a grumpy old man. In short, they'll be able to get there without any problem. She invites Rona and Shin to join them. They say elves are a very kind race, so they can consider it a picnic. Shin agrees. It sounds fun, and she wants to try the aloes that Renya dreams of. Rona has no choice but to agree as well. So it's decided when everyone's ready, they'll set out. They stand at the gate. The house is left to Frau. She assures them they can rely on her. They left her some magic stones, so everything will be fine. She waves them off. Renya greets Az, who's waiting for him at the school gate. Natalia and Arun, his nose bandaged, emerge from around the corner. They notice Renya and his companions. What are they doing here, and why are they with him? Renya stands in front of a large, glowing gate, the transport gate. It can only transport one person at a time, with luggage at most. I've already warned the elves of their arrival. Their guide will escort Renya through. Renya apologizes for burdening Az. Az says that while Renya's methods have their flaws, the class has become much more obedient, so they're even. Riris, standing next to him, steps forward. She didn't thank Renya last time. Renya says Az will repay his debt with this gate, so let them get closer. Az and Riris blush. Renya steps forward. It's time to go where the rice is. It's the first time Rona has seen him so cheerful. Renya passes through the glowing gate. On the other side, 3 elves are waiting for him, led by a girl. She asks who they are. Renya and his group from Kukuriki, the ones they've been told about. The girls gather behind Renya. The elf welcomes them to the land of elves. Their friend, the Kukuriki Adventure School, asked her to be their guide. The elf's name is Crowell, and she's a student at the school. Renya introduces herself in response, and he's pleased to meet her. Shin and Rona glance at him in surprise. Silence falls. Renya turns to them, telling them to introduce themselves. They're being rude. Shin didn't know Renya spoke Elvish. They didn't understand a word. Rona asks him to introduce them. Renya doesn't understand what they're talking about. Jiriel steps forward, introducing himself as Kyrie, a traveling merchant. Renya didn't seem to realize they were speaking Elvish. Rona and Shin need a translator, and Jiriel could be it. Renya thinks it's probably because of the knowledge of foreign languages skill he received from the goddess. Rona is impressed by Jiriel's knowledge. She dismisses it as a trifle. It would be problematic not knowing the language of the destination. She introduces Rona and Shin in Elvish and asks Crowell to give them a tour. Crowell looks at their chests. She says they'll get along better with Jiriel than with a human girl with excess fat. She asks Jiriel to translate her words, as she herself doesn't want to speak the crude human language. Rainier and Jiriel look uneasy. Did Crowell just insult them? She leads them to the city of Grand Kine, located in the east of the western continent. It's not as large as its counterpart, Kukurika, but it's a renowned city in the land of the elves, handling goods from all over the continent. Compared to humans, elves have very strong mana, so their magical technology is highly developed. This applies particularly to magic stones. They use them not only in infrastructure but also in irrigation systems and defensive barriers. So even if a monster attacks them, which is unlikely, they can handle it without any problem. Shin and Rona gaze around. They've heard about it, but everyone here is very beautiful. Renya understands why elves have such a developed agricultural industry. He asks Crowell if there's anywhere they can try aloes and elven beans. There are plenty of them at the market, and Crowell offers to show them the best ones. She takes them to a vendor, and Renya samples her wares. It's the spitting image of Japanese miso. He's delighted to have been able to taste this flavor even in another world. He asks Crowell if the person who taught them this recipe was a foreigner. He's right. At school they tell us they were the first to invent miso and soy sauce. Renya is glad they kept the names. Unlike the cruel, carnivorous human race, elves eat primarily plant-based foods, and miso and soy sauce complement them perfectly. They, along with aloes, are considered indispensable. Renya is in anticipation. He and Crowell turn at the sound behind them. Shin calls out to Renya. Ro has somehow gotten into trouble. Some guys have started hitting on her. Crowell is furious, calling them a perverted race. The elves around Rona admire her beauty and her proportions. She looks like the reincarnation of the goddess Venus. Are all humans really this beautiful? Rona is baffled. The elves squat before her, admiring her full breasts, feeling themselves overwhelmed with maternal love. Jiriel translates their words for her. Rona feels a strange sensation in her chest and she blushes. Has spring really come to her again after so many years? Both elves are handsome, and Rona turns around, wanting to make sure Renya sees. Maybe he'll understand how beautiful she is. Renya asks if all elves are so pathetic. Crowell gets angry, telling her not to compare everyone to those vulgar reformists. Jiriel asks about the reformists. Is there some kind of political unrest in their country? About 10 years ago, the Archduchess of the Duchy of Trident arrived in the land of the elves as a representative of the humans, delivering a friendly speech. Little did they know that their men's encounter with her would be the beginning of future troubles. Previously, the elves had been attracted to slender girls. No one had questioned them. Everything was as it should be. But when they encountered the Duchess, for the first time they saw breasts so large that they spilled out of their clothes. The male elves were shocked to the core. Some of the elves decided they were mistaken. The Almighty had sent them a new revelation. The full breasts with which the human race is gifted deserve praise. They are a new symbol of prosperity. They want to discover what lies beneath them, to lay hands on them, to comprehend the reality buried within them, the true truth. They decided that large breasts are the best. Others tried to reason with them. They were prospering enough to be proud of themselves. It was only shape that mattered, not size. Elven women had beautiful proportions, their small breasts like two marvelous flowers, while humans only had excess fat and they didn't need it. The groups of elves, divided in their opinions, began arguing, accusing each other of blindness and stupidity, each trying to prove their case about breasts. The elves were displeased with this squabble. This conflict eventually spread throughout the country, dividing the elven males into two factions, the reformists and the conservatives. Rumors of this incident then spread, and the city, home to the transport gate, became mired in the reformists' ranks in an attempt to cement friendship with humans. Renya asks if they're really that stupid. Jiriel seems to be starting to hate elven men. Crowell supports them, saying these men are a disgrace to their race. Renya says humans aren't far behind, especially considering that elven women are very beautiful, just like Crowell. Maybe the elven men just wanted something new. Crowell is shocked, blushing and turning away. It was too sudden. Jiriel giggles. Suddenly, a loud squeal and the neigh of a horse is heard. A runaway horse gallops down the street, its rider falling from the saddle to the ground. The horse could crash into someone's house. It needs to be stopped. Renya grabs her sword as a shadow passes by. It's Shin. She nimbly jumps into the saddle, grabs the reins, and stops the horse. The elves look at her with admiration. Shin strokes the horse, soothing it, and Renya is surprised. Crowell and the other elves run up to the rider lying on the ground. He's seriously wounded, and someone calls for a doctor. The elf says he has a message for Captain Skuld, saying they need to strengthen the defenses quickly. Crowell asks what happened to him. He explains in a confused manner that hordes of monsters are gathering in the labyrinth forest, and they want to attack the city. The elves gather around Shin, who is sitting on her horse, admiring her grace. She looks like the incarnation of the god of war. Shin laughs awkwardly, not understanding a word. Renya watches her with a smile, and now Shin's turn to garner admiring glances. Crowell calls out to him. Renya and her friends are sitting at a table in the elf house. Crowell has asked them to wait for her in this room. There's an emergency. Apparently, they're no longer allowed to leave without an escort. Renya notices an elf standing by the wall staring at Rona's exposed breasts. The elf blushes, caught, and turns away. Renya isn't sure it's normal to think about breasts at a time like this. He asks the others what the labyrinth forest the elf mentioned is. Shin chews a pie, remembering that Renya hasn't been there yet. There's a labyrinth forest on every continent, and deep within it lies an entrance to a dungeon. Each continent has its own entrance, and all these forests are connected to the miasma forests, where monsters dwell. The labyrinth forest of the eastern continent is so large that it intersects with the Kukuriki forest, but Shin has never heard of it being overrun with monsters, and it shouldn't be strong. Jiriel looks thoughtful. Renya glances from her to Rona. He notices she looks displeased and asks what's wrong. Rona says she's not angry, just shocked by the reason the elves were drooling over her. What perverts? Shin mentally notes that she was fine with it back then. There's a knock. Crowell returns to the room, thanking them for waiting. With the help of that fortress guard, they learned that something serious had happened. They couldn't let Renya and his friends get caught up in it. They would send them back to Kukurika immediately. Renya and his friends are surprised. Renya says they don't agree to such an abrupt return and asks Crowell to explain what's going on. Is it related to that labyrinth forest? Crowell clenches his fists. Renya is right. 20,000 monsters have been spotted in the labyrinth forest, and as they speak, the monsters are approaching Grand Kine. Everyone is shocked. 20,000 monsters. All 200 elven fortress guards in the forest were destroyed, overwhelmed by their numbers and trampled. The rest of the fortress were non-combatants, and the monsters killed all the men and raped the women before the goblins ate them all. Given the distance to the city, they have about 4 or 5 hours before the attack. Grand Kine has only 500 soldiers, and if you add in the students and fighting-capable residents, that's only 200 elves. They won't be able to hold out with that number. They've already sent a request for reinforcements to the capital, but it will take them at least a day to assemble the fighters. All that can be done now is to buy time and let the villagers take refuge in a safe place, and while they hold off the enemy, let Renya and his friends bring reinforcements from Kukuriki. Crowell interrupts himself and asks them to destroy the transport gate from their side. Renya asks about the magical technologies they spoke of. The elves never expected to face such a threat, so they'll only help hold off the enemies for a short time. Shin cries out, wondering if they're really going to sacrifice themselves for the city. Rona pulls her back. Crowell says they're not so weak that people should worry about them. They won't fall so easily. She may still be just a student, but she's undergone city defense training. She wants to prove to them that they can hold off the enemy while Renya's group evacuates with the residents. The girls look worried, and Renya seems thoughtful. Shin asks how old Crowell is since she's still studying. Crowell will be 70 this year. By human standards, she's about 15 or 16, and 70 is old for humans. Renya tusks, even the elf is younger than him. Jiriel watches his reaction. Renya rises, accepting Crowell's decision. They're in no position to offer help. They really should go back. Shin jumps up, confused. Is Renya serious? Does she not want to abandon the elves? Rona pulls her back, and Shin stares at her serious expression, confused. They have no right to interfere. Shin tries to protest, but Rona says she needs to start understanding her situation. Renya is doing everything right now. Shin falls silent. Crowell smiles slightly, watching her. She turns to Shin, expressing her gratitude for her help in stopping the horse. Thanks to her quick actions, there was no unnecessary chaos in the Elven city. Renya is surprised by her words. Crowell tells Renya he'll pray for them. Renya asks if he's being sarcastic, if he should be the one saying those words. Crowell smiles awkwardly. The city is in turmoil, the elves urging each other on. Renya and the girls are evacuated along with other residents while the warriors prepare for battle. Renya remembers men in military uniforms. Shin watches the scene with confusion. She glances at Renya, who walks calmly ahead. She sighs. Suddenly, Jiriel calls Renya. She wants to speak with him privately. Frau Verd has new friends, Rona and Shin. The owner is away today, so she's cooking. She'll do her best. Rona and Shin are waiting at the table. Frau places a plate with a stinking sandwich in front of Shin. It's a sandwich made with aged meat. She got the meat from the man buried in the backyard. It must be delicious. Shin, horrified, calls out for Renya. Frau hesitates. The owner said he'd be back late and would be rude to call him. Rona decides they'll eat out then. Shin offers to cook something herself, even though she hasn't been at the stove in a while. Rona asks Frau to stop Shin. Frau has never seen her sister Rona so serious. Shin swings her sword. Today she'll finally use the exorcism sword she recently acquired. She swings the sword, trying to drive away the evil spirits, and Frau watches as the spirit swirls behind her. Sensing something, Shin turns around but only sees a smiling Frau, encouraging her. Jiriel and Renya walk away together, Jiriel lamenting their bad luck. They'd just arrived and already stumbled into a war. It seemed they'd have to find another business route. But wouldn't the elves be deeply in their debt if they helped them now? Renya looks at her intently. Jiriel smiles innocently. Renya asks what she's getting at. Does she want him to help the elves? Jiriel would like to agree, but she has slightly different goals. Renya demands to know. He doesn't have much time. Jiriel understands that his impatience suggests he's doubting his decision. She gets to the point. She asks, what if Renya had the strength of 20,000 men? Renya's eyes widen. Jiriel says he has the potential to deal with this situation, or so she thinks. Can a merchant really now judge someone else's potential? Renier doesn't care how many he can defeat alone. It won't save the situation. Even if he slaughters 1,000 enemies, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. Jiriel says that of course it's impossible now, but only if Renya uses only a sword, hinting at magic. Renya can only use light and fire bullets, so it's unlikely she'll be able to defeat the enemies with a single shot. Jiriel has a proposition. She'll give him magic capable of dealing with this horde of monsters, and he'll save the elves. As a merchant, she needs this city safe and sound, and Renya will be able to retrieve her precious aloes. Besides, Renya doesn't want to leave them here either. Renya is irritated by her habit of prevaricating in conversation. Does she really think she understands him? He turns away as if he'd risk his life for God knows who. He declines her offer, unwilling to sacrifice his life as someone else's pawn. Jiriel smirks. She's talking about a way that doesn't require risking anything. Renya can't understand where such confidence comes from. After all, Renya, in order to reach the elves, quickly created a huge number of magic stones, which already proves his enormous mana reserves. Although this is impossible without a shuriken, even first-class mages can only craft a few stones per day. Renya's potential is far greater than that of any first-class mage. Renya understands that this isn't the only reason. Jiriel offers to unlock his magical potential and teach him how to use it effectively. Maybe Renya is interested now. Renya tusks, remembering Crowell, the other elves, and the men in uniform. He had already come here to eat rice. Then they don't have much time. Let Jiriel quickly tell them what she wants. Rona and Shin are waiting for them near the house. Rona is interested in what Renya and Kiri are talking about, and Shin looks worried. Someone calls out to Rona. It's the two elves who admired her earlier, dressed in armor and holding weapons. Rona shudders. The elves drop to one knee before her, apologizing for their rudeness for how they treated her badly earlier. Before leaving for war, they want to express their feelings to her. Without Kyrie's translation, Rona can't understand what they're saying. The elves are likely doomed. They can't stand against such an overwhelming number. Their only chance is if each of them can kill a few monsters on their own. They'll likely never return to this city again. But before they died, they wanted to meet Rona to burn her wondrous image into their memories. If in exchange for their lives, she and the city's inhabitants can escape, if even just one life is saved, even if it's in the land of humans, she will say, You did well, and pray for the elves fighting in this war. That's all their souls desire, for peace. Rona watches in amazement as they tremble, their heads bowed. She asks them to look up. She doesn't know what they said, but their sincerity reaches her heart. Though she serves a human god, as a priest she will pray for their salvation. She folds her hands in prayer, a light emanating from her. The elves gaze at this radiance in awe, thanking her. Tears stream down their cheeks. They have no more regrets now, and they are ready to give their lives to save her. They rise, wiping their eyes, wanting to give her something too, the only words in the human language they know. Rona listens with a smile as they tell her, "Take care. And long live your beautiful breasts." They smile, still crying. Rona freezes. The elves leave to prepare for battle. Rona was right, they are disgusting. She regrets her prayer. Renya and Jiriel return. Renya apologizes for the wait and wants to talk. He says he's decided to get tired and help in the war. Rona and Shin are shocked. Rona asks if he's gone mad. Why did he suddenly change his mind and decide to help the elves? Renya sighs. He came here to eat rice, and if he returns without doing so, he'll hate himself. And if he can't get it here, it'll be even more difficult elsewhere, and it's also a good way to put the elves in his debt. Rona doesn't understand. Is that really the only reason? Shin says that if Renya fights, so will she. Renya cuts her off, saying that only he and Kiri will go to the battlefield. Rona and Shin will remain here, ready to return to Kukurika at any moment. The girls are shocked. If Renya doesn't return or the monsters get here before him, they must return to Kukurika and destroy the gate. They can't let them reach Kukurika, even if it means abandoning everyone here. Shin screams that she can't abandon the elves. She wants to fight. Renya says she won't help them like that. He understands her feelings, but now is not the time for that. He should consider who is more important to her, the elves or the people of Kukurika. She mustn't forget the time, the place, and her position. Rona watches Renya. Shin agrees, hurt, but Renya is right. She'll do everything in her power. Rona worries whether Renya can defeat 20,000 monsters. Renya says he gave in to Kirie's persuasion, but they still have a chance. Everything will work out if he goes alone, but whether he can protect the city is another matter. That's why he's asking them about this. If Renya has thought this through carefully, then Rona believes in him. She'll pray for Renya to return to them alive. Renya smiles and thanks her, and he's about to leave. Shin calls out to him. She knows she has no right to speak like that when she lets him fight alone, but she asks him to save the elves. Renya will do everything she can. Rona puts her hand on Shin's shoulder and they watch him go. The elven garrison captain, Skuld Sorvitz, commands the others to reinforce the barriers. The enemy is already close, and every second of effort increases the chances of their wives and children surviving. She frowns, unsure how they can fight with such a disparity in numbers. She notices something off to the side. Skuld shouts for the chatter to stop, and Renya, clad in armor, and Jiriel approach. Skuld is surprised to see where the humans are coming from. She examines them, noting how small Jiriel is. Is she human too? Renya shouts that she wants to speak to the commander and asks someone to call the commander. Renya is called from behind. It's Crowell asking what they're doing here since she told them to run. Renya tells her to bring the commander. He wants to help. She says they need to run, but Renya grabs her head and tells her to call the commander again. Skuld steps forward, asking what's going on. She introduces herself and says she's the commander here, but she has no time for small talk now. Renya dumps bags full of magic stones in front of her. He, Kanugi Renya, a human adventurer, wishes to join their ranks. Let them take his magic stones as payment. He will be of use to them. Skuld is shocked, wondering where he got so many magic stones. Renya says that since their barrier can only hold back the monsters for a short time, they should use the magic stones. Skuld is grateful for them, but who is Renya? She turns to Crowell, asking if he's her friend. Crowell is at a loss and replies, not quite. The elf calls Skuld. The monsters are already at the barrier. She'll head there right now. She thanks Renya for the stones, but they don't have time. She should do as Crowell says. Skuld orders the barrier expanded to cover the maximum area and the use of new magic stones to double the line of defense. Crowell is outraged that Renya hasn't returned to Kukurika. He ignores her complaints, asking what kind of barrier they're using. Renya came to help. They're short-handed after all. Crowell agrees, but that's not the topic right now. She falls silent, looking at his impassive face. Renya says they don't have much time, so let her tell him about the barrier. A horde of monsters is approaching. This barrier covers the city and the surrounding area. It acts as a trap, a sacred protection of the elven deity. No. Activated traps materialize as forest plants that entangle each intruder, enough to stop weaker monsters. Normally, the barrier covers the entire forest, but now their opponents are an army of armed monsters. Furthermore, their goal is to buy as much time as possible for everyone to evacuate. Therefore, this time, the barrier is used to reinforce the area near the defensive line and increase the strength of the traps. While the barrier holds back the enemies, the elves will reduce their numbers with gunfire and magic. The essence of the strategy is to slow down the enemy. Renya considers this a good solution, given the difference in numbers and the advantages of territory divide. Crowell worries about holding them like this until reinforcements arrive from the capital, her hand shaking as she grips her bow. Renya thinks about the 200 apprentices among the guards. Renya asks Jiriel for her opinion, and she thinks it's very convenient for them. The barrier will make enemies easy targets, and they'll be able to act more easily while the elves focus on the monsters. This way, she'll be able to unleash Renya's full power without holding back. Renya looks at the nervous Crowell. He doesn't know if he can comfort her, but he's a veteran of many battles, and he'll support them so they can fight their first battle at full strength, no matter what. Crowell looks at him confused. She asks if there are many such idiots among the people. Renya sighs. He himself doesn't know much about the people here. He remembers Shin, eager to fight, and smirks. Some of them really aren't that bright. Crowell laughs. The elves shout that the enemy is approaching, that they will soon reach the barrier. Crowell uses visual magic, and she sees silhouettes emerging from the forest 200 meters away. 150 monsters come out of the forest with a stomp. One of them, in armor, laughs. There is so much meat here, the freaks around him can hunt for glory. Everyone tensely awaits the monster's arrival, standing along the defensive line. The monster leader grins. The goblins begin to shoot their bows, arrows whistling out from behind the trees. The elves are lost under a hail of arrows. One is wounded in the shoulder. His comrade nearby draws his bowstring. Skuld orders them not to waste arrows now. They must wait until the enemies get closer. A horde of goblins runs toward them, growling, the distance rapidly closing, only 100 meters left. Skuld commands that it's time. She orders the barrier to be raised. The elves kneel, pressing their open palms to the ground, asking Mother Earth and the forest spirits to protect them. A bright light emanates from beneath their palms. The barrier activates. The goblins rush toward them, growling. Suddenly, one of them stops, his leg entangled in a strong vine. Others are also caught in the traps, the vines lifting them into the air, souls and piercing their bodies. The goblin corpses are left hanging from the trees. The monster commander doesn't understand what it is. He, too, is entangled in vines, and he tears them apart. Apparently, this is the elves' famous forest magic. That makes things a little more interesting. He addresses the monsters struggling with the vines, urging them to show what they're capable of. The monsters growl, tearing and slicing through the vines, freeing themselves from their traps. Skuld curses through clenched teeth. The enemy's speed has slowed, but it seems they're breaking through the elves' traps with brute force. So they've decided to break through instead of going around them. Skuld attracts everyone's attention, commanding vengeance on these scoundrels for the disgrace and oppression of their fellow spirits, and the elves support her with shouts. The archers and mages prepare, beginning to cast spells and drawing their bowstrings. The archer asks for the forest's protection, and they release their arrows. A magical wave flies along with the arrows. The monsters don't have time to understand anything, as the arrows pierce their bodies, and one goblin's head is completely blown off. Despite their wounds, they press forward. The enemy doesn't stop. They haven't even tried to evade. Is someone really commanding them? This is what Skuld feared, but now they have no choice. The city's residents continue to evacuate. They must hold off the enemy until the last. She commands the archers to fire again. Renya and Jiriel watch from a distance. It seems their time has come. The elves are completely focused on the enemy. Jiriel tells him about the storm. This is an advanced air magic that will create a tornado to attack the enemy. She believes Renya and air are a perfect match. Jiriel read about this spell by chance in a research paper, but she added some details and adjusted it to be activated simultaneously with Renya, so its destructive power should be significantly greater. Renya is hesitant, but she persuades him to try. Renya raises her hand. He begins casting a spell. First, imagine a wind forming above the enemy and simultaneously control the air so it descends. Air currents swirl in the sky above the monsters' heads. Renya's hand, outstretched toward the sky, trembles as he tries to focus on control. Crowell notices the strangeness of the wind and she turns and looks at Renya, unsure what he's up to. Renya continues to manipulate the wind, sweat pouring down his face. Jiriel watches the wind. It's 20 kilometers above the ground, its temperature already around -700 degrees and continuing to drop. The elves look up, unsure what's happening, why the sky is moving toward the enemy. Renya continues casting her spell. Jiriel commands him to unleash a cold storm upon the land. A large vortex appears in the sky. Renya commands the wind to crash down onto the ground. He lowers his hand and the wind funnel hits the ground with a howl. The super intense macro squall is complete. The monsters watch in shock as a hurricane descends from the sky. It devours the monsters in its path, and the monster commander also doesn't understand what's happening. The elves notice that the hurricane seems to be moving toward them. Renya and Jiriel are both confused. Jiriel urgently asks the elves to erect a barrier, a magical shield, anything at all. The elves begin to summon a shield, but the hurricane is already ripping away their barriers. Crowell rushes to Renya. Rona and Shin watch in horror as the tornado looms in the distance, Shin worried about Renya. The vortex begins to dissipate. Crowell shields Renya with a magical shield and thanks her for saving him. They both stare in shock at the scene ahead. The forest is completely covered in snow, with monster bodies scattered here and there. The enemy army was destroyed by just one attack. A large crater remained in the center of the forest. Could Renya have done all this? Jiriel exhaled with relief. Renya turned sharply to face her and slapped her head with her palm. He continues to beat her, blaming her for what happened, as they themselves almost died. Jiriel snaps back that it's his fault for putting so much mana into the spell. They continue to bicker while Crowell awkwardly watches their altercation. Renya suddenly staggers, clutching her head. Crowell immediately twitches in concern, but he assures her he's fine. Apparently, he's used up too much mana. One of the elven women reports to Skuld that a tornado has wiped out half the enemy forces. She's shocked that a single attack could have done all that. In the forest, the monster commander rises to his feet, shaking the snow off his armor. Did the elves really have such dirty tricks up their sleeves? If not for his anti-magic armor, he would have gotten it too. He kicks the orc's corpse lying nearby, indignant that this wind has blown away his entire army. He crushes the orc's head with his boot. It doesn't matter, they were just pawns after all. The surviving monsters peer out from behind the trees and the commander fumes. Are they really shitting their pants already? They are his great army after all. They could, in theory, try to escape, but then he would personally kill anyone who did. The monsters tremble under his menacing gaze. The remaining enemies are advancing on the elves. Have they really lost their minds? Skuld is shocked that they refuse to retreat even after this. Apparently her fears about their commander are being confirmed. It seems their barrier has been weakened by the tornado. They have no choice. She commands the troops to reform while the enemy is still on the move and to replenish the mage's stock of magic stones. So the monsters continue to advance only because of their commander, and if he is killed, they will retreat. Renya is still unsteady. He apologizes for weakening their barrier, but now he knows how to defeat them. Jiriel asks what he has in mind. Renya says that they just need to cut them all down. He is a swordsman after all. He didn't like Kiri's methods anyway. Killing all the enemies at once is not for him. Crowell is shocked. Renya really plans to attack them alone. He agrees they just need to defeat the commander. Even though Renya has destroyed half of them, there are still over 10,000 of them. Crowell doesn't understand why he's going to such lengths for them. Renya turns away, saying that there are many idiots among humans and he is one of them. He grins. It's simple and clear. Kill the enemy general and the elves will be saved. Crowell clenches her fist to her chest, calls out to him from behind and rushes after him. She cups his face in her hands and presses herself to him with a kiss, her cheeks red. Renya freezes, her eyes wide in shock. Crowell pulls away, leaving a thread of saliva between their lips. Jiriel covers his mouth with his hands, blushing as he watches. Crowell says she's granted Renya the elves protection so he won't have to worry about the barrier's traps. She's heard a kiss works best. She blushes and looks down, retreating. She's done him a great honor. She awkwardly adjusts her hair, muttering that it was her first time, but it could also be her last. If not for this situation, she never would have, but she can't let Renya die. Renya interrupts with a smile. He understands. He gratefully accepts her gift. Renya turns and leaves, and he waves at her, telling her to do it next time in a more appropriate mood and place so he shouldn't die either. Crowell and Jiriel watch him go awkwardly. Renya disappears into the forest. He runs through the forest. Despite his words, it would be foolish to wander here blindly and miss the enemy general. It would be better to cause a little trouble and lure him out. Several monsters appear before Renya, and he reaches for his sword. Renya leaves two headless in a few blows. The third goblin jumps on him. Renya pierces him in midair and summons fire around her. Her mana is slowly regenerating. It's so cold and damp here that there's no need to worry about forest fires. He hears someone calling him. It's Crowell from the camp. She'd connected them that time, and now they can communicate over distance. Renya hadn't known kissing was so comfortable. Crowell asks him to turn 30 degrees. Their mages have detected a strong mana flow from there. They think it might be their commander. Judging by the mana, it might be someone from the demon race. Renya rushes in that direction, shuddering at the memory of the demon race, Emel's race. Crowell says demons are very dangerous, and if Renya can't handle him, she should just run away. Renya fights a crowd of monsters, and he smirks. Their commander appears before him, a large sword slung over his shoulder, clearly different from all these orcs. The monster commander frowns, asking who he is. The commander thought he was some kind of strange elf, but he didn't understand what the man was doing here. Renya asks if he's the commander, and he laughs, asking what if he is. Renya asks why he didn't retreat, considering the tornado wiped out almost half of his army. By all logic, the loss of half an army without reinforcements is already tantamount to defeat. The commander laughs. He asks if Renya is in her right mind. He, the commander, is still unharmed, no matter how many pawns he loses. Does Renya really think the elves have a chance? The commander is still alive, and if he destroys this damned elven town, won't that mean he's victorious? Apparently those puny humans just can't understand that. Renya expected the commander to be more concerned with the demons he had defeated, but it turned out he was simply a feeble fool. The commander grinned, generosity urging him to accept Renya's challenge. He would prove that no matter how many opponents he faced, they would never defeat him. Renya thought he was an idiot for falling for this provocation. The commander swung his sword with a shout, and Renya was wary of him attacking from such a distance. The attack wave flew straight at him. Renya jumps aside, and the attack crashes into a tree behind him, snapping the trunk. The commander is surprised that Renya dodged. Apparently, the worthless thing is capable of something after all. This strike resembles Emel's air blade. It seems his sword contains some kind of magic. If Renya hadn't dodged it, he would have died already. The commander grins. That was just a greeting, but if Renya dodges the next strike, he'll be congratulated. He attacks with a cutting storm. A multitude of quick blows fly at Renya. He jumps to the side. The commander laughs, continuing to attack. Renya continues to dodge. He closes the distance between them. He slips under the commander's sword, catching him off guard and strikes. The commander covers himself with his armored hand. Renya, noticing how his katana trembled, jumps back. He managed to cut the commander's arm, and he was shocked. That sword shouldn't hurt like that. What kind of magic was contained within it? Renya told him to ask whoever sold him that sword. Apparently, the commander survived the tornado thanks to that dark armor, a sword of air. It seemed clear why he was so overconfident. Renya realized something. He had powerful armor and weapons, so the elves' attack barely touched him. He relied solely on his superior equipment to overwhelm the elves with his strength and his feeble swordsmanship, even though he called others weaklings. In fact, he's the only weakling here. Renya thought the demons were strong, but apparently he was wrong. It seems Emel was the exception. The commander growls in rage. He screams that he will kill Renya mercilessly here and now, raising his sword over him. Suddenly, one of his arms flies off. Such an attack is easy to pull off at close range, and since the commander decided to show off his armpits, Renya easily reached the weak spot in his armor. The commander growls in pain. Perhaps it's pointless to tell this to someone from another world, but where Renya comes from, they have a term for it: war crime. Renya wanted to deal with him quickly, but perhaps he should pay for the massacre he committed in the Elven fortress. The commander curses him. He refuses to buy this nonsense. He swings his sword again, but Renya chops off his hand. The commander will be judged by the elves. The commander is horrified. He's never heard of such a man, and is he really human? What's this pressure? He crawls away from Renya. He screams at the monsters to protect him, but they tremble in fear. Renya is amazed that such a weakling could become commander. He plunges his sword into his leg, and the commander screams. Renya tells him not to disgrace himself. He only stabbed him to keep him from escaping. If he were a true commander, he could have endured such pain. The elves in the fortress were in much greater pain. The commander screams that he'll kill him, again calling for help from the monsters hiding behind the trees. Renya is surprised that he's still trying to act like he's in such a state. At least his endurance deserves respect. He raises his sword over him. The elves are fighting the monsters. Skuld is shouting at them not to retreat, otherwise their families will become victims. They must be pushed back even at the cost of their own lives. The ogre hits Crowell with a large club, sending her flying into a tree. The ogre lifts her by one arm, licking his lips. Crowell silently apologizes to her father and Renya. Suddenly, the ogre becomes distracted and Crowell uses her air blade to sever its head. The decapitated ogre falls, releasing her. The monsters retreat. The elves shout with joy. They've done it and protected the city. Skuld breathes heavily. Did they really do it? The elves laugh, hugging each other, and Jiriel exhales. Is Crowell saved? Renya appears, glad she survived. Renya is dragging a tied-up enemy commander. He was a bit violent and heavy, so Renya cut off his limbs and dragged him here. Crowell is shocked. Renya suggests they do with the commander as they see fit. They could boil him alive, roast him, or torture him for information. Crowell asks if this means everyone is saved. She looks at Renya, lost. Renya nods. They won and she too managed to survive. Well done. He pats her head. Crowell starts to cry. The elf slowly comes to. He remembers being struck by a goblin's poisonous arrow and now he feels a strange, unknown warmth. He opens his eyes. Is he still alive? He sees a large woman's breasts above him, the girl glad he's awake. The elf thinks he should be dead. Everyone is bustling around, searching for medics here and there. Rona has extracted the poison arrow from the elf and healed his wounds with magic. The elf looks at her as if she were a goddess, thinking that now he can die. Another elf slaps him in the face for such nonsense. He can't throw his life away if Rona saved him. As a man, he must live and continue to follow his faith and only then die. The elves embrace. The first one apologizes and admits his mistake, ready to dedicate his life to his large breasts. Renya approaches, asking Rona for forgiveness. They're short on medics. Rona says everything's fine, it's her duty as a servant of the god. The elves cry and shout in the name of breasts. Rona already regrets helping them. Shin runs up, calling out to Rona, saying they still need help. Renya tries to stop her. The elf's barrier is still activated, and Rona shrieks as vines entangle her, lifting her into the air, her underwear visible beneath her skirt. The elves' noses bleed, and after this, they can die without regret. Standing behind them, Renya, Jiriel, and Crowell wish for their lives. Rona and Shin watch as Renya chats with Crowell. They've become close since the battle. Jiriel translates their conversation for them, and Renya says Crowell is cute, but because she's an elf, she's as flat as a board. Crowell says the others aren't her rivals anyway. Jiriel says they're only here for a short time anyway and will be returning soon, meaning they won't see each other again. Crowell's confidence is only due to her first kiss with Renya. Rona and Shin are shocked. This is the first time Jiriel has heard that a kiss is the best way to grant protection. Would Crowell kiss the girl too? Crowell says yes, it's not that Renya is special, and blushes deeply. Rona and Shin feel annoyed that the 70-year-old elf has outdone them. The elves are sitting at a table. Today's topic is the growing number of revolutionaries. They will now use a secret code among themselves. An elf knocks on the door and someone says chest. He replies board and is let in. Another elf knocks on the door and says mountain. It's a revolutionary and they're about to arrest him, so the elf runs away. Crowell asks Renya's opinion while Renya takes a sip from her bowl of soup. He says white rice and miso soup are unspoiled and asks for more. Rona and Shin watch, disgruntled. Crowell gives him another one and addresses Rainier as dear. Rona and Shin jump in shock. Crowell is confused. She thought that was how they addressed other people. Renya asks if they don't like the food. Rona and Shin aren't talking about him. Frau Verd sits next to Renya, contentedly tucking into miso soup. Shin asks why Crowell is dressed like that. She's wearing a light, frilly dress that resembles an apron, her hair tied in a bun. She looks down at herself, unsure what's wrong. Renya told her to dress like that. Renya says that's how women in his homeland dressed when they cooked. Shin thinks Crowell exudes a certain wifely aura, and her broken human language only enhances this effect. Rona doesn't quite understand her, but she knows one thing: they are clearly inferior to the elven race. Renya eats. It looks and tastes just like Japanese rice, his stomach now at peace. Rona and Shin also chew discontentedly. Isn't it just aloes and elf beans? So it's true that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. They'll remember Crowell for this. She fooled them with her baby face, even though she's already over 50. After the attack was stopped, Renya and the others set off for the elven capital, Walt. They walk down the hallway of a large castle and are led into a room. An elf introduces them as Mr. Renya, who saved one of the cities and his friends. Renya and Shin are surprised by what's happening. A male elf sits at the table with a female elf next to him, 2 elves standing behind them. They are invited to greet the 12th king, His Majesty Roch Tifalt, and his 35th heir, Princess Crowell Tifalt. Renya and the girls sit down at the table. Renya is surprised, though he had thought Crowell was too aristocratic for a commoner. Suddenly it dawns on him and he asks again about the 35th daughter. Does the king really have 35 children? Rona says that elves are renowned not only for their longevity but also for their great strength. It's not a fact that there are only 35 of them. Shin leans into Renya's ear, whispering that she won't be able to bear 35 children. Rona says she can only bear 2, and Renya is angry. No one asked them to. The king laughs, apologizing for the shocking news and explaining that although Crowell is the 35th heir, no one said she was the youngest in the family. Excluding those who did not inherit the throne, the number of heirs exceeds 200. The guard elf is shocked. Could there really be more? After all, they have a law. Anyone not residing in the palace must be detained and face the death penalty. The king glances sideways at Rona, asking if she'd like to have some fun to build trust, so to speak. Rona is confused. She could even join the royal family. He would personally ensure her safety. Rona slams her fist on the table. She doesn't understand the idiocy going on here, but she's not going to buy into his rhetoric. The minister standing over the king's shoulder says he cannot allow His Majesty to do such a thing. Being king is a great responsibility. It is impossible to defile royal blood by intercourse with a foreigner. It is heresy. Being born with breasts is an irreversible tragedy. The truth lies in the plains. Another elf behind the king smirks contentedly, pleased with the king's thoughts. Just imagine what could happen if you cross Rona's large breasts with the royal blood of His Majesty, an elf with large breasts, the dream of this country, a dream of hope and childbearing, the future. The minister shouts at him to shut his filthy mouth. How dare he talk such nonsense? He shouts that the advisor is thinking narrowly, but he is thinking about the future and enriching the minds of the people. They continue to argue about breast size while Renya and the others listen with disgusted expressions. The king taps the table, stopping the elves. They are both mistaken. As someone who honors the culture of his country, he cannot deny the charm of a flat chest. These mounds, growing over hundreds of years, are impossible not to love. However, large breasts also have their own charm. While flat breasts are like a sprout, large ones are like a blossoming bud. Any man wants to bury himself in them and taste the nectar they contain. Each of them possesses its own special beauty, each one a sacred fruit one yearns to nibble on, so wouldn't it be better to accept them all as they are? The elves apologize for their foolishness, heeding the words of their king. Renya and the girls realize how far the elven country has fallen, and Crowell blushes and wants to kill someone. Renya stands up, irritated, about to leave. The king stops him. It was just elven humor. Renya pities a state whose ruler allows himself such jokes. It is clearly doomed. Afterward, the king says that thanks to Rainier, they were able to suppress the monstrous horde with minimal losses. Crowell told him everything. As the ruler of this country, he would like to thank him personally. It was only thanks to his help that all the elves survived. A huge thank you to him. Moreover, Renya even managed to capture the enemy commander. He wanted to reward him. Would he accept it? Renya doesn't think he deserves it, but it's too late to blame it on a misunderstanding. Renya came to this country only for beans and rice, so he would like to learn how to grow them himself and at the same time learn about other products found only here. The king asks why the others are here. Rona and Shin say they did nothing. All the credit goes to Renya. The king compares their modesty to the breasts of elven women. They plan to build a military strategic bridgehead to protect against monsters, but considering their merits, they are ready to give this territory to them, on the condition that one day they return it to the elves. Renya doesn't understand why he needs her. His continent is going through hard times, and without proper environmental management, the problems will only worsen. So Renya gives up the territory in favor of agriculture, and the king agrees to organize everything. He wants to discuss something else with them. He has one request. Will Renya now agree to take care of his daughter, Crowell? Crowell chokes on her food. She's indignant. The others sit in shock. Renya screams that she refuses. Crowell is upset by his abrupt response. Perhaps Renya also likes big breasts and hers are too small, so why would he need them? Renya defends himself by saying he wasn't trying to call her unattractive. Shin thoughtfully touches her breasts. The minister yells at Renya for his disrespect. How dare he refuse the king and even insult Crowell's breasts? The king interrupts, asking Renya to explain her refusal. Crowell is of royal blood and her status must apparently remain secret. Would it be a good idea to let her go with Renya? The king believes it would be best for everyone. He suggests asking Crowell if she has any special reasons for wanting to go with Renya. Crowell flinches and blushes, looking at her father in surprise. Renya says her answer won't change anything. The king says it's obvious. Crowell has royal blood written all over her forehead and it's not safe for her to stay here, so he wants Renya to take her with him. Renya doesn't understand what he's up to. The minister is outraged by the tone Renya uses when speaking to the king, telling him to learn his place. The king tells him to shut up and explains that everything is perfectly simple. Crowell is the 35th heir to the throne. Her chances of succeeding him are extremely slim, and the chances of anyone from her line going on the journey are practically zero. So let Renya allow her to travel with the one she loves. Crowell blushes. Renya finds their relationship strange, but perhaps the king isn't as lost as he seems. The king doesn't understand why Crowell is so defensive. He also says that their forest was badly damaged during the battle. A very important part of it, practically sacred, was almost completely destroyed. It will take a lot of money and manpower to restore, and the production of rice and beans will have to be suspended for some time. But if Renya takes Crowell with her, everything might be completely different. Renya glances sideways at the dejected Crowell. He sighs. It seems the king leaves him no choice but to agree. Are they really going to stop producing rice and beans? The king says no, not if their problem is solved. Renya agrees, but he lives on the human continent and there they'll have to speak human. Crowell blushes and agrees to speak human. The king asks him to take care of her and Crowell is touched, and also, if possible. The king asks for as many large-breasted beauties as possible to be sent to their country. Renya is irritated. Was it really necessary to ruin such a moment? The ministers begin arguing again and Rona and Shin grimace in disgust. Jiriel suddenly asks Crowell to speak with her. Renya and the girls return to Grand Kine on horseback to return to their continent through the transport gate. The elves, delighted with Rona, weep as they leave. Upon their return, they bid farewell to Jiriel and head home, where Frau Verd greets them. The king is asked if he is certain this was the right decision. The king and the minister stand on the balcony. The king's thoughts are divided. One part of him believes everything is as it should be, while the other believes this is only the beginning of something greater. As long as all the difficulties they encounter don't corrupt them, they will surely make each other better. A turmoil reigns in Crowell's heart. This should nudge them in the right direction. The minister sighs wistfully about flat breasts. Jiriel contacts the goddess to report on the current situation regarding Renya. There were no problems with the distribution of natural resources. Thanks to the resources Renya brought with him, Eredora is slowly coming back to life. Everything is going according to plan, but the elves told Jiriel some information they received from the captive demon. The goddess munches contentedly on a cookie. Jiriel says a king has appeared on the demon continent, most likely due to the recent influx of resources. The goddess is shocked and the cookie falls from her hand. There's a high probability that a new hero will soon arise among humanity, one who will decide to challenge him. What should they do about it? The goddess curses this world, who even invented it. She suggests they forget about it and asks Jiriel about Renier, whether he's making good use of the abilities he's been given. Jiriel isn't sure of the answer. Renya seems to be using his powers unconsciously. He has no control over them whatsoever, yet he possesses the ultimate power, boundary transcending. If he learns to harness it, he'll become invincible, and given how much he loves to overdo it, his magic is simply beyond comprehension. He can cause far more damage than intended, as when he raised a forest of 10,000 monsters. Luckily, Renya doesn't like using magic, so they can leave things as they are, because if he suddenly gets out of control, Jiriel won't know what to do. The goddess screams that it's her job as a guardian angel to protect others, and that she should simply watch over him and keep him under control. Jiriel covers her ears. The goddess infuriates her. Surely this world is so problematic because of her personality. The goddess says she's busy with other things right now and she's entrusting this world to Jiriel. She hangs up. Jiriel sighs, what a pain in the ass, being an angel sucks. The pot is almost boiling, now 2 teaspoons of miso can be added. Crowell and Frau Verd are cooking together in the kitchen, Crowell teaching Frau, whose human language is a bit broken. Frau Verd follows her instructions, asking her to teach her other elven recipes for the master, and Crowell agrees with a smile. Sister Crow speaks human much better now. Crowell thanks her. Master Frau Verd and his friends returned a week later. Frau was surprised to learn she would now be living with a proud elf, but Sister Crow is very kind. Thanks to Frau teaching her the human language, she already understands most of human speech. The elves' learning abilities are amazing. Crowell looks at Frau Verd, wondering if she's really a Shiruki. She senses some kind of abnormal magical power coming from her. Frau Verd clears her throat, saying that before Crowell can move into their home, she must answer one of Frau's questions. Crowell is surprised that she can speak Elvish. Frau asks how she feels about her master. Crowell and Renya are surprised. Renya saved Crowell's life. If he asks for her life or body, she will gladly give it to him. Frau understands that elven love is not easy. Renya thinks she's exaggerating. The next question is what Crowell thinks of the house. It's her first time in a human home, but she's noticed great attention to detail. It's clear the house is well maintained. Renya praises Frau. She looks pleased. Frau Verd wants to ask one more thing, what Crowell thinks of girls with big jugs. Crowell says they should be ripped out. They shake hands. Frau Verd is pleased to meet Sister Crowell, and the feeling is mutual. Renya uncomfortably thinks about how quickly they've gone along. After that, there were no misunderstandings between them. Frau tries the soup. It tastes exactly like miso soup, very tasty. She asks Crowell if elves understand medicine. Crowell knows a little about creating elven cold remedies, digestive remedies, and dietetics. Crowell isn't sure how effective magical medicines are for humans. Frau Verd grabs her hand and asks her to tell her everything. Crowell agrees. Rona sits on the porch, watching the training. Master occasionally trains Shin's sister. They practice swordplay, and the clanking and heavy breathing can be heard. Renya is distracted by the weight of her sword, giving Shin a chance. She raises the sword over her head and brings it down hard. Renya blocks the blow, and Shin's sword breaks, its tip sticking into the ground nearby. She stares at the broken piece in her hands, confused. Renya says there's nothing to be done about a broken sword, but Shin still makes too many unnecessary movements. The sword's durability can be increased by attacking at the right angle. Shin wipes away the sweat from his face, listening to his advice. Frau Verd calls out to Renya as she runs out of the house. She notices Shin's progress, but she's nowhere near her master's level. Renya isn't even out of breath. Frau has prepared a bento with Crowell's help, and she suggests they take a break. Renya and Shin agree. Frau Verd presents them with a plate of onigiri. Renya chews contentedly. Frau and Crowell have prepared a lot, so they can eat as much as they want. Renya notices a strange taste, salt, and some kind of elven seasoning. Shin and Rona are also enjoying the food. The food from Renya's homeland is always so delicious, they're lucky to have it. Renya says he should thank Crowell's ancestors. He didn't know elves made onigiri. Onigiri are a popular food among elves. Crowell often ate them for lunch at school. Renya wants to teach her a couple of soy recipes from his homeland, and Crowell enthusiastically agrees. Rona and Shin look at them disapprovingly. Apparently, their lack of cooking skills is a major flaw. Frau Verd chuckles slyly. Maintaining the master's health is also an important job. Renya sighs contentedly, sitting in the hot water to relax. He needs a bath. He feels a surge of energy. Frau Verd asks from behind the door how his temperature is. Renya says everything is fine, just the right temperature to warm up his body. Thanks to the owner, Frau Verd can regulate the temperature with magical stones. The rustling of falling fabric can be heard behind the door. Such a large bathtub helps Rainier relax. In the previous one, he could barely stretch out his legs. The renovation is beginning to bear fruit. The bathroom door creaks open. Rona and Shin enter, covering their naked bodies with towels. Renya asks what they're doing here. Shin leans over and grabs his wrist tightly. She pulls his hand to her chest, feeling strange, her heart beating faster than before. Rona, too, begins to drool when she sees Renya. She presses herself against him from behind, wading into the water, begging him to satisfy her desires. Renya is angry. He told Rona to back off. Rona says it's wrong to reject a woman's love. Is Renya hesitant because he's a guy? Renya tries to break free. Why are girls so strong in situations like this? Rona runs her hand down his body. Is Renya really that repulsive to her, even though she was so confident in her body? Renya tells her to take her hand away. Shin forces him to squeeze her breast, to let Renya do something about the feeling in her chest. It won't subside. The girls breathe heavily and moan, pressing against him. Renya doesn't understand what's wrong with them. He glances sideways toward the half-open door. It's all Frau, right? Frau Verd fidgets outside the door, not understanding what he's talking about. Renya tells her not to be such a fool. She added something to the onigiri. They tasted weird. Frau sweats nervously. Apparently this additive was incompatible with humans. Renya grabs Frau's head, demanding answers. She asks him not to get mad, but he frightens her. Rona and Shin lie unconscious in the bathtub. Frau Verd kneels before Renya, asking what she did. The master had been working so hard Frau thought he was tired, so she asked Sister Crow to teach her a couple of elven food additives and put some in the onigiri. She didn't expect the result to be like this. That wasn't her intention. Frau also loves her master very much. She thought it would improve his health. Renya understands that Frau used her beloved master as a guinea pig and even dragged Rona and Shin into it. Frau Verd begins to cry. This is all because the master has been away from the Elven Kingdom for a long time, despite promising to return quickly. Frau was left to look after the house alone again. She was so lonely, and she was also worried that her master might never return. Renya recalls their first meeting. He apologizes for his long absence and for making her worry, and he strokes Frau Verd's head. Frau smiles and wipes away tears. Renya says that's different. He'll teach Frau how to experiment on people. He flexes his fists and Frau swallows nervously. She cries out that she's very sorry. Renya tells her to apologize to Rona and Shin. Frau Verd has a big bump on her head. She sticks her tongue out at him. As expected, she failed to fool her master, but she wasn't lying about being very lonely without him. Frau loves her master just as much as her sister, Crow. Enchantress Carol yawns, sitting at home with a book in her hands. Suddenly the doorbell rings. She straightens her clothes and goes out to greet the customers, welcoming them to the best shop in Kukurika. She's surprised to realize it's Renya. Shin and Crowell stand behind him. Since Renya's mana has increased significantly, he'd like to learn new magic. The magic ball flashes brightly in Renya's hands, blinding everyone in the room. The flash of light is visible even through the windows outside. Carol falls and watches in shock as the orb in Renya's hand shatters into pieces. Renya rubs his eyes, as surprised as his friends. Carol screams that Renya wanted to blow up her shop, even though she told him to use just a little mana. Renya says it was just a little. Carol is irritated. How did Renya's mana increase so much in just a few months? Even the most brilliant mage couldn't have accumulated such a quantity, even if he trained himself to the point of exhaustion for 10 years. Did Renya make a contract with the devil? Renya criticizes her for being rude. He simply trained hard. Carol no longer knows what to believe. She rubs her forehead in irritation. She starts flipping through the book. Renya's magic type is air. She said it was useless last time, but with the amount of mana she has now, Renya can use any magic. Renya has only recently mastered superpowered macro flurry. He wonders if he can master a spell that costs 10 gold. Carol is shocked that he can't learn gradually. She thinks Renya is worth investing in. She slams the book shut. Carol agrees to help him choose a spell that will suit him. She'd done him a favor in advance and wanted something in return. According to her, Renya would need to train to master this spell. Shin wants to train with him, and Crowell also offers to help. They're walking down Kukuriki Street. Suddenly their group is spotted and a girl calls out to Renya. It's Oz's girlfriend, Riris. She blushes and says she's not here yet. Renya asks if she's waiting for him. He was in the Elven lands on business. Riris swallows and asks to talk. She sips the tea. It's so delicious and has an incredible color. Riris has never tasted anything like it. It's black tea, and here Renya wants it, whereas in the Elven lands he drank green. Crowell stands next to him, watching him with a smile and flushed cheeks. Renya asks what Riris wanted to talk about. She folds her hands in her lap and fidgets. The truth is, Az recently officially asked her out. Renya is surprised. Shin is excited. Renya congratulates her, even though he thought they were already dating. Riris looks depressed, though she says she's happy, and Renya asks what's wrong. She asks if Renya knows Az's full name. Renya doesn't remember, though Az told him. I think his name is Az Hound. Shin sighs in surprise, and Renya doesn't understand. Riris explains that Hound is a clan from Triton. So Az is rich? You wouldn't know it, though. Az is the second son of the Hound family, but it seems he ran away from home to become an adventurer. Even so, he's still of noble birth, while Riris is a commoner, yet he still wants to be with her. She'll never repay his kindness. And it seems the Hound seed is trying to interfere with their relationship. Riris recently saw Az arguing with a messenger. Az told her not to worry about it, but he's just too nice. Renya says the situation is unpleasant, but he's no help. Riris wants to be with Az, but this situation is bothering her. It's infuriating. That's why she wants to be recognized as an adventurer, so Az's family will stop whispering behind his back. She clenches her fist to her chest, unwilling to take advantage of Az's kindness. Renya realizes that she probably wants him to help her. In other words, Rainier is going to destroy his entire family. Crowell and Shin shush him. Jokes aside, are the achievements of adventurers really that highly valued in society? Rainier didn't think so. Shin says money and property decide everything, especially in Trident since it borders the demon continent and the Emperor's daughter attends adventurer school. This reminded Rainier of something a guy from school, Auren said. He looks at Riris, who seems upset. He thinks she needs more self-confidence than achievement. No wonder the students behaved that way back then. He asks what's next now that she's decided on a goal. Riris perks up. She pulls a folded piece of paper from under her cloak. She's copied down the requests posted in the guild. Renya, Shin, and Crowell look at what's written there. Exterminate the goblins, drive the kobolds from the mines, bring death to the zombies harassing the village, all fairly mundane. Crowell notices something interesting on the list, pointing it out to Rainier. Subduing a wyvern. A wyvern nest has formed deep within the hermit's tomb and must be destroyed. The reward is a horse and 5 silver coins, with additional rewards available depending on the number of wyverns slain. Shin says that even the highest-ranking adventurers from Kukuriki are unlikely to be able to handle a wyvern. The additional reward must be quite substantial. Renya asks what wyverns are. Simply put, it's a small dragon with a snake's head, considered a subspecies of dragon. They can't breathe fire, but they can fly and have strong scales and a poisonous spine at the end of their tail. They're a powerful beast since they can fly. It sounds complicated, not like a dragon, but a mission like this requires at least a B-rank team. Riris still has a long way to go to reach that rank. Renya remembers that he's still ranked E, even though they've been pushing all sorts of things on him. Shin is also ranked E because she rarely takes on missions. Riris thought Renya was ranked higher since he dispatched everyone so easily back then. Crowell raises her hand, getting everyone's attention. She's a B rank, so she could take on this mission. Renya is surprised, and Shin asks if elven ranks are different from human ranks. Riris says they don't depend on race. Shin grits his teeth, looking at Crowell's proud expression. She slaps the table, standing up. It's decided then they'll take on this task. She wants to check the results of her and Renya's training as soon as possible. Renya says she's simply jealous of Crowell, but Shin denies it, blushing and turning away. Renya agrees. He was just about to try out a new air spell. They'll take on this mission. They need to prepare, so departure is in a couple of days. Riris thanks him sheepishly. She silently asks Azza to wait a little longer. Renya will make a real woman out of Riris. The others laugh awkwardly. It sounds a bit ambiguous. Preparations for the mission begin. Renya reforges her weapon while Crowell watches. Frau Verd brings him food for a break. Shin trains alone somewhere in the wasteland. Rona meets a messenger at the gate who hands her a letter. She stares at its contents in shock. Renya, Shin, Crowell, and Riris are walking along a path between the mountains. Judging by the information given, their destination must be somewhere around here. Renya says there was no need for Crowell to come with them. Crowell doesn't mind. After all, she's the one who took the quest and she wants to be close to Renya. Shin and Riris are struck by her directness. Renya asks where Rona is, and Shin replies that she had some business at her parents' house. Suddenly, a wyvern flies overhead, whistling. A multitude of wyverns are flocking here. It looks like they've found a nest. Renya tries to count them, but the wyverns keep calling out for more. They need to be dealt with quickly. Riris grips his sword nervously. The wyverns growl and snarl. They're clearly going to be tougher than any of the bugs Renya and the others have encountered so far. Renya is overjoyed, meaning she'll be able to test the new spell at full power. Renya has about 14-15 wyverns hovering in the air. Ideally, they'd attack by surprise, but that's unlikely to happen. He watches the wyverns. They look clumsy. He turns to look at Riris standing next to him, asking if she's sure she wants to give them the entire reward. Riris nods. Without them, she wouldn't even be able to take on this quest. Her fingers nervously tighten on the hilt of her sword. Renya plans to take on half the enemies herself, leaving the girls to deal with the rest themselves. Shin and Crowell are shocked. This seems too much for them. Renya asks if Shin didn't want to show off her training and prove she's just as good as Crowell. Shin, taken aback, agrees. Crowell is struck by her simplicity and worries about Renya. Shin plans to surprise Renya. Renya asks Riris if she remembers her sword's special ability. She looks thoughtfully at the sword. Renya thinks she can handle the wyverns, the others will cover her. Now Renya needs to prepare. She needs to concentrate her magical power on her feet, push off the ground with them, and release her mana. He uses the storm spell, pushing off the ground and flying high into the air. The wyverns are shocked. Renya flips in midair, lamenting that despite all his practice, he still hasn't learned to control his power, the air whistling in his ears. Shin and Crowell watch him from below, dumbfounded. The wyvern, its serpentine maw open, flies at Renya with a scream. He manages to dodge, but it was too close. He's starting to fall. He needs to create a barrier at his feet and create a storm within it. Then he can create a foothold in the air. Just in time, another wyvern tries to attack him. Renya swings her sword, cutting off one of the wyvern's wings. That was not bad. Pushing off the air gathering beneath his feet, he runs towards the wyvern. He jumps on top of it, landing on its head and plunging his sword into it. Blood gushes from the wyvern's wound and Renya leaps away from it, landing on a rock. He's pleased. Dealing with wyverns is much easier this way. High-level magic, as expected, is very useful. Shin and Crowell watch him from afar, thinking him crazy. Shin asks if Crowell can do the same since she's also an airbender, but Crowell denies it. Renya is at the highest level. Even with air magic, his fighting style is terrifying. His mana continues to increase. He can simultaneously cast spells without words simply because he's Renya. As for Crowell, she resolutely draws her bow. A wyvern dives down at them with a scream. Crowell aims her bow, the arrowhead glowing as she casts a spell. She fires the arrow at the wyvern. The wyvern dodges the arrow in midair, but an air blade follows, cutting off its wing. Crowell is pleased. That's what she does. Shin and Riris are impressed. Shin realizes Crowell always sends an air blade after her, and she remembers Renya telling her to study her opponent. Another wyvern lands in front of them, and now it's Shin's turn to join the fight. She clutches rocks in her fist and throws them hard at the wyvern, which shields itself with its wing. When she lowers her wing, there's no one in front of her anymore, and she growls in surprise. Shin lunges at her from behind. She leaps into the air, sword raised before her, and the wyvern notices her. Shin grits her teeth, needing to be faster, faster, faster. She thrusts her sword near the wyvern's eye, surprised by its strength. Suddenly, the wyvern tries to strike her with its tail. Shin jumps back, the wyvern falling to the ground. That was close. Shin shouldn't relax. She catches her breath and turns to Crowell, who stands next to her, looking at her with surprise. Crowell is impressed. Shin has gotten stronger, though a sword isn't the best weapon against a flying opponent. Shin laughs, rubbing the back of her head sheepishly. She's glad her training has paid off, though she should still be careful. Crowell smiles, remembering how Shin stopped her horse in the Elven City. She turns to Riris, the one she worries about most. Riris runs from a wyvern diving at her. The wyvern crashes into a rock, raising a cloud of dust. Riris screams, unable to stay on her feet. The poisonous barb on the end of the wyvern's tail flies towards her. Crowell cuts off the wyvern's tail with an air blade and asks if Riris is hurt. Riris apologizes for having to save her. Crowell shouts for Renya. She's outraged that Renya rushed into battle alone when Riris is also here. Renya tells her to stop helping others. She came here to kill wyverns. Crowell tries to object, but Renya cuts her off. Riris is as much of an adventurer as Az or them. They can't lead her by the hand and kill wyverns at the same time. Didn't Riris want to show the hounds she was worth something? Riris realizes he's right. She stands up, telling Crowell not to worry about her. Crowell is surprised by Renya's behavior, and Shin says he always acts like this. If they don't try, he'll leave them behind. That's just the kind of person he is. Shin smiles awkwardly, and Crowell is displeased. She fires her bow, knocking 2 wyverns out of the air. Shin is shocked. She grits her teeth, refusing to lose. Riris looks at the sword in her hands, the blade reflecting her face. Renya suggested she try this sword. It was forged from mithril given to him by the elves, and he'd been wanting to try it out. Shin was shocked. Mithril is a legendary metal. Renya thought this sword would make things easier for Riris. It possessed special properties. It absorbs the swordsman's magical power and can also be controlled with the power of thought, meaning it can change according to your wishes. Riris grips her sword, ready. Everything will be pointless if she can't defeat the wyvern herself. She wants to do everything she can for Azza. A figure watches Renya fight in the air. The wyverns seem to be no match for him. Renya's style is as entertaining as ever, which is to be expected. This will be fun. Black energy spreads behind the figure, completely wrapped in bandages. The wyvern roars, circling in the air above Riris. Riris clenches her fists. She, too, is an adventurer and has come here to fight. She will prove that even one like her can handle a wyvern. She can't shoot at them like Crowell. She's not as strong as Shin. She didn't know how to get them, so she couldn't attack. But if Crowell was able to cut off that poisonous tail, she could do the same. Wyverns also use direct attacks, but fighting here would be dangerous, otherwise she'd get hit with more rocks. She needs to get out into the open. Riris is running. She lets the wyvern attack her, then dodges. She takes a stance, gripping her sword, and shouts at the wyvern to attack. The wyvern notices her and roars. Riris tenses as the wyvern hurtles toward her. She aims for its head, then dodges through its legs. She leaps forward, flying under the wyvern, her sword slicing through its belly. Riris falls to the ground, coughing from the dust, and the wyvern rises into the air again. There's a long, bloody cut on its belly. Riris succeeded. She rises to her feet, ready to continue the battle. She just needs to keep landing blow after blow. Crowell spots Riris off to the side and calls out to Shin, showing her that Riris's back is completely exposed. If the wyvern breaks the rocks again, it will be dangerous. Shin is at a loss. She watches Riris breathe heavily, clutching his sword, and remembers how she and Rona fought the goblins back to back. She smiles and scratches her cheek. There are still 2 wyverns left in the air, and Shin suggests they kill one each and settle the fight. They'll help Riris at least this much. The offer is unexpected, but they're still a team after all. Shin smiles. Crowell looks at her in surprise, not understanding why Shin is so pleased, but she agrees. Riris's feelings are more important right now. The battle continues. Riris attacks the wyvern again, attacking its exposed belly. Shin and Crowell each deal with their own wyvern. Riris falls but rises back to his feet. Renya dispatches the wyvern with a single swing of her sword. Riris breathes heavily, standing before the wyvern. It's almost over. Crowell and Shin catch their breath. Just a little more and Riris will be able to kill the wyvern. She must kill it. The wyvern looks at her with its snake-like eyes. Riris remembers how Az, blushing, asked her out. She said she was very pleased with his feelings, but he was a hound and she was an ordinary girl and would be a burden to him. Az shook his head and told her not to worry. Riris was more important to him than the people who abandoned him. He liked Riris. Riris gritted her teeth and silently promised Az to kill the wyvern, the sword in her hands beginning to glow. Riris charged the wyvern, then she could tell Az. What does she like about him? Suddenly, the body of another wyvern falls with force on the wyvern, pressing it to the ground. Riris is shocked, as are Crowell and Shin. Renya lands above, complaining about the wyvern's restlessness. He's not yet used to running through the air. He asks what's wrong. He turns and looks at the wyverns lying on the ground, their bodies shaking. Renya feels uneasy. Could this really be because of him? Shin and Crowell nod. That was the last wyvern. Riris would have killed her any minute now. Riris falls to his knees, despairingly thinking about his failed confession to Azu. Renya repents, admitting her mistake. Well, you could say they've dealt with the wyverns as a group. All that's left is to retrieve their corpses. Renya asks if Riris can be with Az now. She's taken aback and nods awkwardly, thinking that she probably can. She praises the others and they all feel very awkward. Crowell and Shin criticize Renya, saying Riris should have defeated the wyvern herself, while Renya has already killed more than half of them. Renya asks if there are any other good quests in the guild, but this was the best one. Usually powerful monsters appear spontaneously around Kukurika, but here the wyverns have built a whole nest and the guild must notify them of such a thing. Renya wonders how they can defeat the hounds. Suddenly he notices something, tenses, and turns around. A voice bids them good day and says they seem lost. Renya is shocked. A huge dragon rises into the air in front of them. Crowell and Shin look at him with a mixture of shock and horror, and Renya is also tense. Where did a dragon suddenly come from? The dragon lands heavily on the ground in front of them. Renya and the girls are nearly blown away by a strong gust of wind. Crowell doesn't understand why a dragon is here since they only live on the northern continent. Renya smirks, so it's a real dragon, as they said. Wyverns are nothing compared to them in size. Crowell says they definitely can't handle it and need to escape. Renya asks Riris if this dragon is strong enough to kill it and send the hounds packing. Riris sits trembling on the ground and Shin looks at Renya in shock. Renya charges at the dragon, finally a worthy opponent. Crowell is horrified, but Shin, for some reason, isn't even surprised. The figure in bandages says that Renya is as charmingly determined as ever and sends bandages to him. wrapping them around Renya's body. Renya is perplexed, bandages clinging to his body. The figure suggests they simply talk since they no longer need to fight. Shin asks if Renya is alright and he nods, ripping off his bandages. The figure says they haven't seen each other in a while and the bandages slowly fall from her body. She's back with them, more alive than ever, and underneath the bandages is a naked girl. Renya, Shin, and Crowell look at her in shock. Crowell joined them. Frau Verd is very happy. When Renya was in the land of the elves, natto was never mentioned, but they do have soy sauce. This is the first time Crowell has heard of such a dish. Renya explains it's not difficult, you just need to let the soybeans ferment. Crowell tries it and winces in disgust. Renya asks how she likes it. It's delicious with rice. Crowell trembles, turning away, seemingly unable to object. Shin is practicing with her sword. Rona says Crowell has settled in nicely. Is Shin okay with that? Shin is glad there are more of them and she's having fun too. Rona knew she didn't get it. She says Renya could be taken away. Crowell will take him away. Shin returns to training. It seems it's gotten really noisy. Az, blushing and clearing his throat, rehearses how to ask Riris out. He's so nervous he can't say it properly. He needs to act natural. During the lecture, he explains that the shield spell needs to be cast faster, and suddenly he shouts out the offer to Riris. The naked girl says she's glad to see Renya is doing well. He asks who she is and how she knows his name, trying to remember where he heard that accent. The girl replies that they've met before. Her name is Emil Roger. Renya should remember this name. Renya is shocked. Emil is that transforming demon and he was a guy, what nonsense? The girl nods. That's right, her body was male back then. But now she's a young girl in bandages, body and soul, clutching her bare breasts and thighs and playfully licking her finger. Isn't she cute? Renya asks if this means Emil castrated himself. Crowell is blushing behind him and Shin asks who this Emil is. Do they know each other? Renya remembers Shin being unconscious at the time. He explains that Emil is the name of the demon from that dungeon and Shin is shocked. Emil remembers that Shin was there too and asks how the blonde with the disgusting sacks of fat where breasts should be is doing. Renya thinks that Emil probably doesn't like Rona and Crowell mentally agrees with Emil. This girl is definitely from a magical race, looks human, but is clearly not human. She is even stronger than the tribe, conquering other territories. This is the first time Crowell has seen such an aura. Renya agrees that she might be that Emil, but what is she doing here, especially with a dragon? Does she want revenge for last time? Renya, Crowell, and Shin prepare to fight. Emil blushes, hugging himself, and asks why Renya is so cold. Last time he was so persistent. Renya screams that Emil is a disgusting transvestite. She sighs. She didn't expect to be called a transvestite. Back then, that was her temporary uniform for a business trip, but this is her true form, even though she looks human. Bandages fly up around Renya. He tenses up. Emil snaps his fingers, controlling the bandages. Renya and Emil find themselves in a large cocoon of bandages. Renya hasn't had time to react and is now tied up. Emil clings to him, apologizing, but if she hadn't, the idiots outside would have disturbed them. Shin and Crowell try to shout to Renya. Emil places Renya's hands on his chest. If he touches them, he'll finally get it. Emil blushes and groans. Renya tries to break away, irritated. He shouts that he's not into guys. Emil presses closer to him. After all, she said she was really a girl, and that's what she wants to convey. She places Renya's hands on her buttocks. Renya squeezes her fingers tensely. Emil asks him to be more gentle. Emil trembles and moans. Wet sounds are heard. Renya is indignant. Emil asks him to be careful. Renya is simply something. Such a long form is simply perfect. He is already inside. Emil is delighted. Shin and Crowell listen in shock, their faces burning. Crowell draws his bow and they shout for Renya to be released. Emil peers through the gap in the bandages and advises them not to do anything strange. She wouldn't want to hurt anyone, but if it came down to it, she might just snap them both like twigs. Shin trembled with fear and Crowell was also tense. Emil told them to relax. She had no intention of harming Renya. Renya used her air blade, ripping through the bandages holding him. He swings his sword at Emil, and she freezes in shock as Renya attacks her. The blade presses against the side of Emil's neck, leaving a thin cut. Renya is furious. Emil still likes to play with people, and if she continues to underestimate him, Renya won't care that she's a girl and a member of a magical race. He'll finish her off a second time with that very sword. Emil smiles and strokes the blade of the sword with his finger, just as she thought. She adores this look. She'll answer Renier's question about what she's doing here, tell him why she's here, and why the dragon is with her. She'll tell him everything, so first, let him take that damned sword away from her. Emil is now dressed and she thinks it suits her. Renya asks if she's really a woman. Emil sighs, how tight is Renya? Doesn't he believe her even after he's touched everything? Renya is indignant that she forced him to do it. As Emil said, she simply borrowed that man's body, binding her soul to it. Afterwards, she returned her soul to the central continent, but it took time to get used to the body, which is why she wore bandages. Riris lies on Crowell's lap. Emil says the transformation is convenient, she can use her full power. Renya says she's just a pervert. He asks what Emil intends to do now. Does she really think her beast will help her kill them? Emil says it's actually a gift, she wants to move in with them. Renya is shocked, he doesn't understand. Emil clears his throat, she blushes and winks sweetly, she wants to live with Renya. Renya asks again, Emil tries to sound even nicer, asking if he can move in with Renya. Renya still doesn't understand. Emil says something unpleasant happened and now she can't go back to her home. But don't worry, she'll follow human laws while she's here and she has a souvenir for them, a dragon. She thought Rainier would enjoy carrying out the wyvern, so she decided to bring him. It's the only one in her collection. The dragon vanished in black smoke behind her. The explanation was poor and Emil expected Renya not to believe it, but she could promise not to be a burden. Renya asks why him? If Emil is on the run, then he should go to someone else. Emil says it's because she loves him. If Renya wants, they can start dating, they can continue what they started. Renya agrees. Renya clenches her teeth in irritation. Crowell screams that this isn't a joke, not to mention the magic clan. Shin screams that she won't forget what happened in the dungeon. Those adventurers might not have been the best people, but she did terrible things to them. Emil tries to remember what she's talking about, and she says there's a but. Suppose Emil hadn't killed them, would they have simply been having a picnic? And anyway, wasn't killing those intruders just self-defense? Shin and Crowell tense under her dangerous gaze. Emil isn't forcing them to do anything, she has no intention of putting people in danger, but if Renya still objects, she can free her pet, and who knows what he'll do. The dragon appears behind her again. Renya smirks, so that's how it all works out. In short, Rainier will have to kill him anyway, right? Crowell, Shin, and Emil are silent in shock. Crowell and Shin call out to Rainier in confusion. Emil shakes his head, although of course this dragon is a gift and Renya can do with it as she pleases. Renya says that's no problem then, keeping a live dragon would be too much trouble, and besides, its dead body would serve as good compensation for killing the wyvern for Riris. Crowell thinks this is too much. Shin supports Renya since it's a magical clan we're talking about. Riris is shocked. Emil calls Renya a mad warrior. A dragon is far from a wyvern, but let them do as they please, although with this dragon, things aren't so simple. Renya yells at the dragon, asking if he's ready to play after he interrupted her earlier. Crowell and Shin prepare for battle, and the dragon roars. Renya runs forward and jumps on top of the dragon, swinging her sword over her head. The dragon falls on his back, revealing his belly, asking for forgiveness. Renya lands next to the dragon. He, Shin, and Crowell are shocked and Emil sighs. The dragon flaps its tail, lying on its back. Renya is surprised that the dragon can speak and asks him again what he said. The dragon apologizes and asks for his life, tears streaming from his closed eye. Renya thinks he's joking, but the dragon is completely serious. Renya asks Emil what it is. Emil says the dragon was abandoned because he was too slow to escape and ended up becoming her servant. He'd always been like that, but Renya's magical power really scared him. Crowell and Shin watch awkwardly. Was the dragon just showing off? Renya thinks it's some kind of cunning plan, but the dragon denies it. It wouldn't dare. Emil thinks that with his strength, even the other dragons are no match for him. Her mouth is watering. Renya is magnificent. He was gorgeous before, but now he's even more gorgeous. Her premonition was right. She hadn't set her sights on him in vain. She wants to watch Renya some more. Renya gives her a disapproving sideways glance, but Emil doesn't notice. Renya calls out to her irritably. He's lost all desire to kill the wimpy dragon. It's pointless. He doesn't need a dragon like that, so let them find another home. He bids Emil farewell and tells her not to harm people. Emil tries to stop him. Would he really abandon her in this situation? Renya says it's none of his business. He has enough problems with Shin. Emil clings to his hand. She has plenty of other cool stuff, from rare metals to tentacles. Renya tries to pull her away. He doesn't want anything. Emil hugs him around the waist. Renya seemed to be talking about some kind of request. She could help. She is not going to let him go until he tells. Emil ponders this. Upon learning what's going on, she suggests giving Riris the dragon as a pet, but it's unlikely there are any dragon riders among humans. Emil makes a decision, beckons the dragon to her, and sticks her hand into its head. The dragon gasps. She searches for something inside him. The dragon trembles and complains that it's hot and about to burn. Emil tells him to be patient. The others watch this uncomfortably. Renya asks if he's okay, even though he was planning to kill him. Emil says he's fine, it's just his head, it's hard to get through. She finds something and pulls it out. She clutches a small stone in her fingers, a piece of a dragon carbuncle. For humans, it's the same kind of magical stone, but the magical power it holds has its own unique properties. Each dragon has its own unique power, making them extremely rare and valuable. Renya thinks it's some kind of DNA. Emil says it can be used as a contract. Emil squats down in front of Riris. Renya understood her. If Emil succeeds, she can stay with them. Emil smiles contentedly. Riris opens her eyes with difficulty. She tries to remember where she is and looks at Emil in surprise, asking Renya who it is. Riris remembers how they went to kill the wyverns, but what happened next? She remembers and notices the dragon, screaming in fear. She's horrified. Renya says that, well, this is now her new pet. Riris is shocked. Emil tells the dragon that Riris will now be his new master. The dragon and Riris look at each other. The dragon's eyes sparkle, and Riris seems very beautiful to him. He leans toward Riris, calling her beautiful, breathing heavily and lovingly. Riris is frightened and doesn't understand what's wrong with him. Renya finds this disgusting, and Emil agrees. Renya thinks that Emil probably isn't a threat to them. Riris yells at the dragon not to eat her. Renya says Emil will be living with them now. Crowell will be a little uncomfortable living with a demon, but she's also a freeloader. Shin agrees if that's Renya's decision. Renya yells at Riris to tell the dragon to take them back to Kukurika. They need to show the local rich kids what a beast Riris has tamed. Let them see what she can do. Emil is delighted by the expression on his face. Riris is shocked. They return to Kukurika. The guards at the gate notice a figure in the air, not understanding what it is. They think it is a wyvern, but then they realize it is a dragon. Panic breaks out in the city. The guards shout for everyone to gather at the gates and report to the Adventurers Guild, asking them to summon archers and mages. I'm shocked when I hear about the dragon. Riris sits on the dragon's back and watches everyone below panic, unsure what to do. Renya told her they'd disembark first and that Riris would fly alone from here, her chance to prove herself worthy of Azza. She realizes she needs to get ready. Below, she spots Azza. She politely asks the dragon to lower her to the city wall, and the dragon readily listens to its mistress, beginning to descend. The guards stand at the ready, realizing he's flying toward them. The guards panic and prepare to flee. Riris shouts at them not to be afraid. The dragon is not their enemy. Az looks at Riris in shock. The people panic and scream for safety. The dragon flies towards them and Az freezes in place, stunned. The dragon lands heavily on the ground in front of Az, Az's face gone. Riris carefully jumps off the dragon's back and calls out to Az. She says she wants to give him an answer. She's sorry she made him wait so long. She'll just try to get her feelings across. Riris tries to pull himself together and be brave. Az awkwardly agrees. Riris mumbles and stutters, her heart pounding. She blushes and looks away, asking if he'll date her, please. Behind her, the dragon's eyes gleam dangerously and he exhales steam through his nose. Az, his hair nearly gray with fear, agrees, and Riris throws his arms around him, hugging him. The others watch them, Crowell and Shin with confusion, Renya and Emil smiling. And so it was all resolved. Word of dragon rider Riris spread throughout Triton, and she was awarded the title of Count. If anyone's wondering what happened next with Az, although the problems with Az's family were resolved, they made no progress. When Renya and the girls return home, Rona meets them at the gate, telling Shin they need to talk. Yuki Yatsufuso awakens sitting on a chair in an unknown location, unsure of where he is. A woman approaches him and explains that this is the administrator's garden, a place that rebelled against the end of the world. She laments Yuki's death. Yuki is shocked, wondering if he's really dead. He remembers running into his ex-girlfriend and she stabbed him. What will happen to him now? The woman tells him not to worry because he'll be given a new life. Yuki asks who she is, mentally noting that she's okay and he wouldn't mind having some fun with her. A woman from a world different from Yuuki's, she is one of the 5 pillars supporting the goddess of Eldora and the clan's administrator. Yuuki admires the goddess's efficiency. She says Yuuki will become a hero. Perhaps he will be able to free Eldora from the evil demon king, though she doesn't really expect that. Yuuki realizes this is some kind of game where he'll be a legendary hero with superpowers. The administrator confirms that he'll receive several gifts as an advantage, enabling him to confront the demon king. Yuuki perks up. Cheats then were cheating, that's how they want to win. The administrator clears his throat. First, to become a hero, he needs to learn sword magic, and he'll also need knowledge of the local language to communicate. Also, when a hero goes into battle, he unleashes the power of the holy, which enhances the party's abilities. Yuuki doesn't understand anything, but it sounds cool. He asks if there's anything else, and the administrator says that those are all the perks he has. Yuuki says that won't work and their service sucks because it won't be any different from others. He has a couple of ideas. He wonders if there are many hot chicks in this world. Gradually leveling up and earning the favor of others is so tedious, but if he had someone who obeyed his orders without question, that would be a different matter. The administrator agrees to add the presence of slaves to him. Yuuki is pleased. And he also wants his weapon to work at maximum capacity at night. The administrator is outraged. She's infuriated by this worthless trash, but she reassures herself. Even if the rules were changed, the hero is the hope of all humanity, and a harsh fate awaits him. She asks what he wishes for as a parting gift. Could she bless him, or does he want something special? Yuuki was expecting it. He'd like to experience a one-shot from the goddess. The administrator punches him in the face. She's fed up with this scumbag with his head full of vulgarity. Maybe there was a selection error. The screen in front of her beeps with a notification. The admin's curse has been cast on her character. This isn't good. She's powerless here. She needs to try again. A light comes on around Yuuki. The summoning ceremony has already begun, so it seems there's nothing to be done now. We'll just have to pray that this scum can handle it. Yuuki is recovering from the blow, his face aching. The administrator says it's time for him to go. She will wait for the day when the hero saves the world and wishes him all the best. A glowing ball flies in the sky above the city. Renya asks Emily if she is sure she wants this room. There are still plenty of free ones in the house. Emily likes this one. It will be easier to conduct her experiments here. The room won't let out any medicinal smells or sounds. It's very dungeon-like and there's barely any furniture. Renya says that if she spots an enemy, she can escape or kill them. Emily wouldn't mind if Renya attacked her at night. Renya slams the door behind her, bidding her good night. But they're Emily's only way to fit in. Several days have passed since the victory over the wyverns, and Emily has completely settled in and feels right at home. True, Shin and Crowell are still wary of her, but so far she's been no problem. Frau Verd is the only one who's really clicked with Emily, and that's a little unnerving. After Riris acquired her own dragon, she was granted a title and a new estate near which it was planned to be kept. Until the move, it was decided to keep the dragon in the nearby mountains. According to Emily, as long as the contract on the magic stone remains valid, the dragon will not escape even if it is far from its owner. With the temporary return of the dragon Riris to the mountains, peace has returned to Kukuriku, at least for now. Thanks to the income from selling magic stones and the rewards for slaying wyverns, Renya and his group finally paid off all their debts. Little by little, Renya began to adjust to his new life. Then one night, Shin knocked on his door wanting to talk. Renya was free and agreed. Shin entered the room and closed the door behind her, leaning her back against it. Renya asked what was wrong. Shin was acting strange. Shin suddenly threw off her robe and Renya was shocked. He asked what she was doing. Shin was standing there, naked, blushing, and asking Renya to sleep with her. Renya is shocked and he asks again. Shin asks him to insert his large thing into her vagina. Renya asks if she understands what she's saying and Shin yells that she does, so she should shut up and do as he's told. Shin's heart is pounding, wanting Renya to be her first. Renya thinks Frau Verd drugged her again and needs to call Rona to heal Shin. Shin shouts that she's sane and completely serious. Renya looks at her doubtfully and Shin purses her lips. Renya sighs. He doesn't quite understand her, but fine, let him come here. Shin nods and takes a step toward him. The floor beneath her feet suddenly glows and a net springs out. Shin squeals. Frau Verd, washing the dishes, realizes someone's been caught. Shin finds herself suspended in a net from the ceiling, fidgeting. She didn't know Rainier liked this. Frau set this trap here. It reacts to everyone except Rainier himself. Shin screams that this is unfair. Renya says her struggles are showing off her entire household. Shin yells at him not to look and tells him why he even needs this trap here. She was already terribly embarrassed, and now it's even worse. Frau Verd asks if they're intruders, and Renya reassures her that Shin simply opened the wrong door. Renya asks if Shin has calmed down. She still hasn't explained why she came for his cock. Shin covers her crotch with her hand and fidgets. Renya says he can sleep while she thinks. He looks very interesting right before bed. Shin shouts that she'll tell him everything, just ask him to get her out of here. Shin is sitting on Renya's bed, fully dressed, sniffling. Ro told her to do this, said it was the best way to seduce him. Renya thinks he should give her a good beating. He wants to know one more thing. Shin obviously has a reason to come. Does it have something to do with her heritage? Shin is surprised he knows. When they returned, Rona looked very serious. It's logical to assume something happened. Let Shin enlighten him. Shin says it seems a demon king has been born and the Holy Kingdom has summoned a hero to deal with him. Renya tells her to wait. He's confused. He doesn't understand what she's saying or how it relates to her coming to him. Shin is telling the truth. It sounds stupid, but the situation is serious. Renya tells her to explain things step by step. The hero was summoned about 2 months ago, but his army still hasn't left the capital. Shin hugs herself. As Ro said, the reason was that the hero was terribly hungry. In other words, he's just a pervert. That's why when he was summoned, he demanded payment, asking for all the beautiful girls from the Saint and neighboring kingdoms to be delivered to him. He has a bad reputation. Besides, he's already been supplied with everything he needs, but he doesn't seem to be planning on doing anything. Renya says he's worse than any pervert, and Shin should give those types a wide berth. Now they've come to the right part. Does Renya remember which country they're in? They're in Trident, a country that serves as a defensive line between the human and demon continents. On the eastern continent, Trident is the second most powerful country after the Holy Kingdom, allowing them to successfully repel demon attacks. Does Renya know who rules this country? A ruler here isn't the same as a king. Trident is ruled by an archduchess named Lydia Femme Fatale. Renya understands this means Shin's mother is the ruler of this country. Shin remarks that he's not particularly surprised. Renya already realized she was not from a common family, though he didn't expect her to be the daughter of the country's ruler. It's all clear here, but he still hasn't heard the reason or why she became an adventurer. Shin, so to speak, ran away from home a bit. She has 3 other sisters. They're all smart, unlike her. At 15, they were already helping their mother with government affairs, and the soldiers and the people trusted them. Shin, however, preferred to work with her body rather than her mind, dreaming of fighting and becoming an adventurer. She's not fit to be princess. Everyone, including herself, would agree that her younger sister is more suited for the role. Shin would have wanted her to take the throne. But her title as first princess prevented that, so she ran away with Ro, and then they headed to Kukurika together. It's a rather pathetic story. Her mother and sister are likely maintaining the contract with Ro and know what's going on. Shin apologizes for hiding it. After getting to know Renya better, she realized she could trust him and planned to tell him when she had the chance. Renya says it doesn't change anything, and Shin knows little about Renya himself like him. Shin smiles. That's typical Renya. At the adventurer school, there was apparently a girl with the same last name as Shin, Natalia. She belongs to one of their family lines, and they don't have any contact with her. But that's not the whole story. Shin may not be the brightest, but she's still the princess of this country. And the hero must have heard of her somehow, asking for an elegant and beautiful princess to be brought to him from these rumors, so Trident wants to send her to him. Renya is surprised by the word elegant. He asks again if that hero really wanted Shin. She nods. It seems the rumors about her are clearly exaggerated. Shin didn't start them, and anyway, she thought it was a joke. She looks upset, of course. Ro has large breasts and Crowell is simply super beautiful, so it's clear she's losing to them. Renya sighs and admits her guilt, and he apologizes for interrupting her. Lion is outraged that he's apologizing for precisely that. No matter, this hero is in a position where even the king can't refuse him, and if Shin isn't handed over to him, he won't lead his troops and fight the demon king. Trident can't refuse, so Shin will have to go there. She renounced her princess title and fled, but she still couldn't be a burden to Trident. Even the pathetic Shin had an important task to accomplish. So if she's going to lose her virginity anyway, let it be with Renya. She blushes, so she decided to sneak into Renya's room. What kind of stupid tradition do they have in Trident? Couldn't she have come up with something better? Shin is offended by his rudeness, and anyway, she tried to find another way out before coming to him. Shin wanted to help Renya to fight alongside him, but she was nothing but a burden. When they met, or in that dungeon, or even in the Elven Kingdom, And so, after so much training, they went to fight the wyverns and she finally proved useful. She begins to cry, clenching her fists in her lap. Only she had a chance to become a worthy partner for Renya, only she could match the others in strength. Renya sighs, Shin really is a fool. So Shin wants to sleep with him. Shin nods, blushing, her hands shaking. Renya agrees, telling him to close his eyes. Shin obeys, Renya lifts her chin, Shin's heart pounding. Renya gives her a hard flick. Shin falls backward onto the bed, wailing in pain. She indignantly asks what he's doing. This isn't what she asked for. Renya asks what else she expected. He's 90 years old and she didn't even bring Viagra. Shin should get her thoughts in order and not so easily offer sex to others. Usually by her age, she'd already had 3 or 4 sexual partners, so let her think as a swordsman and a woman. He turns to the window. Shin rubs her forehead, realizing she's probably been acting like a child. Renya must admit that Shin has her strengths too. Shin wonders what they are. Renya says that until she understands, she'll remain a child. As for this hero, Renya has a couple of acquaintances who can help. Let him wait a few days while he comes up with a plan, and in the meantime, return to his room. Shin purses her lips, apologizing for her behavior. She's relying on Renya. Shin steps out into the hallway, leaning her back against the door. It was only natural that Renya would say something like that. Rona approaches Shin. Shin smiles sadly at her, but Rona looks worried. A few days later, Shin disappeared without a trace while the others were busy. An envelope containing a letter remained on the table in the room. Renya reads Shin's letter, Frau Verd and Crowell standing in the room behind him. Dear Renya, I'm sorry I left without saying goodbye. When you listened to me and offered to help, I was incredibly happy, thank you. But this problem concerns me and my country. I can't blame it on someone else. If you got involved in this, you'd only get into trouble for yourself, so I'll handle it myself. I'm sorry about my outburst last night. I was foolish, and I'd be glad if you could forget about it. I hope you all continue your adventures as before. Rona and Shin walk down the castle corridor. I think Ro wishes the same, and one last thing. Rona and Shin enter the room where Shin's mother is sitting at the table. Renya, traveling with you was so much fun. It was the best time of my life. Thank you for everything. Tears stream down Shin's cheeks. Your accomplishments and courage will forever be in my heart, Shin. Renya crumpled the letter in her fist. What a fool, she can't live peacefully, she needs to find trouble. Frau Verd and Crowell watched him anxiously. Frau told Crowell what had happened. She and Shin might be rivals, but she owed her a debt. It would be sad to give up like this. Frau agrees it's unfair that Sister Rona and Sister Shin left like this. Before Master and the others arrived, Frau was all alone, so she knows what it's like, and that's why she thinks Master should save Sister Shin. Tears glisten in Frau Verd's eyes. Of course, Renya will drag that idiot back. Crowell and Frau Verd are at a loss. Frau thought the owner would say he didn't care and abandon her, and Crowell thought so too. Renya is clenching her fist, shaking, the damn brat. He is furious. There must be a limit to her insolence. She went and added work to his old back. He doesn't care what she wants there. Now he won't calm down until he drags her back and tells her everything he thinks about her. This ostentatious determination of hers isn't worth a damn, but never mind, he'll show her her place. The letter in his hand bursts into flames. For some reason, Frau now feels even more sorry for Sister Shin. Frau Verd exchanges glances with Crowell, and then they both start laughing. Frau asks where Renya is going, and he says he needs to find out something. Jiriel sits on a rock, pop-up windows open in front of her. It's no use, she's tried everything, but there's a ton of protection here. Apparently, to hack the administrative zone, she'll have to track down the summoning system after all. So will she have to infiltrate the Holy Kingdom? That sucks, she wouldn't want to, there are tons of guards there. But what she doesn't understand is what the admin was thinking. She went and chose this bastard from the depths of civilization as a hero. Even a demon lord is more appealing. They just got permission for additional human resources and they wasted them on this. God knows Jiriel is kind, but this jerk pisses her off. She could really use a few punches. She punches his palm. It's a shame, no matter how angry she gets, she can't touch the hero. She has no right to do so, and covering her tracks would be problematic. But he's a waste of valuable resources. It looks like she'll have to ask them to do something about this, and something tells Jiriel they won't like it. She's clearly overworking herself. One day she'll sue her goddess. Emily's tail twitches and she asks what they want from her. She understood everything, but why would she help Shin? Renya thought so. However, he intrigued Emily. After all, he'd given her a roof over her head, so if he needed help so much. Then he can simply pay with his body. Renya leans toward her. Emily shudders. Renya says it's just for her. Emily is confused. She blushes and shifts awkwardly in her chair. Does Renya really agree? Renya thrusts a folded sheet of paper in her face. Emily's lip was already clenched. As Emily knows, Renya is an alien. This invention is from his world where it existed only on paper. But if there's magic here, creating such a thing would be a piece of cake. Emily looks at the paper. She giggles, understanding everything. Intake, pressure, explosion, purification, high-speed pistons convert rotational energy, and wind will destabilize the device. If you change the number of actuators, you can control the rotation, and the springs and oil will provide shock absorption. Renya asks her if she thinks she can do it. Emily shivers excitedly and giggles, burying her face in the paper. She looks at Renya with admiration. She's never seen anything like this before. Why didn't he tell her before? Renya twitches in shock as Emily circles the room. She's never been more eager to begin research. She can't wait to harness magic to create this incredible device. Renya nods awkwardly, agreeing. Emily hugs his hand, eager to get started. Renya will help her, right? She's got plenty of energy drinks here. Renya won't sleep tonight. Renya thinks he might have screwed up. Emil continues to mumble about the parts and materials needed for the device. Renya thinks that the incident with the dragon has attracted attention, and if its true owner is revealed, all of Kukurika will be in an uproar. There's no way Emily's identity can be revealed. As said, the shortest route to the capital would take at least 3 days, including 5 days of preparation. Az and Renya are sitting at a table in the tavern. Az says the journey from Triton's capital, Gosha, will take about a month. Naturally, that's a very long time, and the transport gate isn't connected to the capital. They'll most likely travel on a magical ship. A heel clicks on the floor. The maids inform Shin that all preparations are complete. A change of clothes is waiting on board. If she needs anything else, she should ask the attendants. Rona stands behind Shin, her head bowed. She asks if Shin is absolutely certain. Shin has already made up her mind. Her mother and sister have been letting her do whatever she wants for a long time already. Shin smiled sadly. The time had come for her to sacrifice her body for the good of Triton. She and Rona approached a large magical ship preparing to depart.